It's time for the Pro Wrestling Time Tunnel Podcast.
We've got lots and lots of things to talk about and to do today. Covering the territories from the 1940s to the 1990s.
It's the best thing going today.
Interviewing wrestlers, referees, authors, and other media personalities that have made the sport of professional wrestling great.
The cream, yeah. The cream of the crop.
And now, here's your host, Tony Richards.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Pro Wrestling Time Tunnel Territory History Show. I am so glad that you decided to join us again, either by audio and listening to our show on your favorite podcast application, or by video, which we show here on our Substack channel, and we email out to all our subscribers. And also, you can catch it on the Pro Wrestling Time Tunnel YouTube channel, where we have an entire playlist called Whole Shows, where we put every episode of the history show up in its entirety. We also have a playlist video clips of our show, which we update almost every single day. There's also a playlist for, I decided to create a WWE Vault playlist. So everything that the WWE Vault is releasing territory related, like the Omni shows and the old Championship Wrestling WWF television shows and things like that, I've curated a playlist on our Pro Wrestling Time Tunnel channel for YouTube, so that you can just go to that playlist and find all the territory stuff that they're releasing. So, you know, I'm not discouraging you to go to the WWE Vault, but if you just want all the territory information in one place, you can come over to our Pro Wrestling Time Tunnel YouTube channel. It'll be there for you. Also, there's a playlist with all of my shows that I have done for Stories with Brisco and Bradshaw. So on that new playlist, you'll find the Dory Funk Sr. episode that I did. You'll find the series on Jim Barnett, the Wizard of Professional Wrestling. I think that was 5 or 6 episodes long. And you'll find the 11-episode Welch Legacy series that we produced. You'll find the Elwood episode, the bass player from ZZ Top, which I was invited to be on that show by Jerry and John. And then all our new episodes from the brand new series I'm doing called The History of Texas Wrestling. We've done 2 episodes so far, and both of those have been based on how wrestling started in Texas all the way back to 1845. Through the Civil War and up through the 1880s. And also another episode we released last week, episode 2, with my good friend Mark Hewitt, where we talked a lot about the carnivals and the athletic shows. And we talked about Gotch and Hackenschmidt and a lot of those early wrestlers, and even some of the people that you may have heard of in territory wrestling, like Sputnik Monroe and Billy Wicks, and several other people that Mark actually interviewed about their days in the carnivals and the athletic shows. It's a really interesting episode, and you should check it out. We're doing episode 3 this week, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. As far as our show here, the Pro Wrestling Time Tunnel Territory History Show, we just did our second mailbag show of this year. We do a mailbag show at the end of every quarter, so at the end of March, at the end of June, at the end of September, and coming up toward the end of December, we will do the mailbag shows. And those have been really, really popular, and you have really responded. Our listenership and viewership reflects you really liked the mailbag question and answer format. And so I'm considering doing those a little more often. But you let me know in the comments and feedback channels that you have, either through my X feed or the Facebook group or the Substack chat. Let me know if you'd like to see those mailbag shows more often. We could definitely do them more often. George Shire, I'll read a couple of things that I've gotten. George, who is on the show here when we do the AWA history shows, we just did the 1976 AWA show, and that was very well watched and listened to. George listened to the show, and he sent me a note. He says, I love your discussion on the Grand Wizard on the Mailbag Show. You failed to mention that he also had been a manager earlier in his career, calling himself J. Wellington Radcliffe. And he managed the team of Magnificent Maurice, which was Gene Dubuque, and Handsome Johnny Barron. I met and chatted at length with the Grand Wizard. His real name, of course, is Ernie Roth, in Boston in 1972. And always count on George. He says, you also mentioned Gary Juster. He's a friend of mine also since his days up in the AWA. He grew up here in the Twin Cities area. He and I caught up with each other last summer when he was in town. Loved your mention of Les Thatcher. He and I have some great adventures together. Man, I love this business. And he goes on to say, Red Bastine, which I mentioned. George and I did a Red Bastine tribute show that has never been released. And so I need to release that coming up. Maybe this quarter we'll get that put out. Red Bastine was the primary guy that got me on the board of directors of the Cauliflower Alley Club back in the early 2000s. He was also the first guy to allow me in a wrestling locker room, and we shared beers on the deck at my house. I'm loving this podcast you and Steve are doing. And then he follows up, his last comment is, I'd forgotten about the Red Bastine podcast you and I did until you mentioned him on this one. I hope you get around to releasing that soon. Sorry to ramble here, but this mailbag episode, it is a goodie. Thank you, George. I appreciate it. I always appreciate George Shire. He's always been one of my biggest supporters and such a resource of information and discussion. I always enjoy that. I just wanted to share that little email note that he sent. Clark Hogue sent me a note, says, thank you so much for selecting my question on your recent podcast with Steve Gennarelli on the Mailbag Show. I know it was a hypothetical question about Junkyard Dog, but I was interested in somebody else's opinion on JYD. I think he had a good run overall. For a time, do you think he was the biggest star in Watt's Mid-South promotion? Well, Clark, he was definitely the biggest star in New Orleans. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back to the roster to review it. But, I mean, certainly from the time they did that Freebirds angle where he got blinded with the hair cream and Michael Hayes and Terry Gordy against he and Buck Robley in the Superdome drew such a large crowd. And, of course, the downtown auditorium there, which they called the Dog's House, he was the biggest star in New Orleans, and I don't think they ever drew in New Orleans quite like they did when the Dog was there. Of course, then he left to go to the WWF. Clark follows up and he says, I know you're from Kentucky, but did you ever make it to the Indianapolis area for Dick the Bruiser's promotion? I'm originally from Indianapolis, but I didn't start watching wrestling until 1984. No, I'm about 200. I know Jim Cornette talks about Dick the Bruiser's Indianapolis show, and that's where he saw Bobby Heenan, and he used to watch that. And Jim and I are almost the same age. I think he's a year older than I am. So we both were sort of in our parallel fandom, and he was able to, I think, get some aluminum foil on an antenna and kind of stand on one leg and be able to pick up the Indianapolis show through snow, but I'm 200 miles or so south of Louisville, down in the western end of the state, and definitely too far away to pick up the Indianapolis show. When I was such a big fan, though, if I would have been aware of it, I probably would have built some structure or something with baling wire and boards with a television antenna to try to pick it up. So I didn't get any of the Indianapolis show when I was developing as a fan. I just got the Gulas Welch show out of Nashville, And then I got the Gulas Welch show. That was the Memphis show, but it was being presented and promoted in Evansville, Indiana, which is where I went to Gulas Welch shows on Wednesday night. But I didn't get the Indianapolis show. I didn't know anything about it, and I was too far south for it. He had stopped running Evansville by 72 when I became a fan, and Gulas Welch was in there running it. Jerry Jarrett and Christine Jarrett had picked it up, and they had started running Evansville. So I wasn't aware of a bruiser back when I was a fan. Listen, I want you to like, subscribe, share our show here, the Pro Wrestling Time Tunnel History Show. I want you to hit the like button and the subscribe button or the follow button or whatever the button is on your podcast app where you can hit it so you don't miss a single episode. We always drop on Wednesday morning at 5 a.m. Central Time, 6 a.m. Eastern Time with a new episode of the History Show every single week. And if you have that button pushed, then it will let you know that I am there in your podcast app and ready to talk to you with more of pro wrestling's territory history. If you love territory history as much as I do, you're going to want to hit that subscribe button and that bell so you never miss a trip through the time tunnel back to the territory days. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify or any of the other podcast app, smash that button that makes sure that you get the notification that there's a new show ready for you. And if you can, do me a favor and give us a 5-star review. We're steadily growing in 5-star reviews, and that's making a huge difference in our listenership and our viewership because that helps people find our show. The more 5-star reviews we have, we show up more in searches about pro wrestling history and things like that. And this show is totally dedicated to pro wrestling history. We don't discuss the modern product here at all. I have been on some shows here lately as a guest talking about it, but typically I am just focused on the territory era of professional wrestling. What else do I have to tell you here? Oh, I really am proud of the Jackie Fargo life and career piece I did in the Daily Chronicle. That came out on June the 27th, and that was issue number 436. So if you're a brand new subscriber this week to the Daily Chronicle, go back and look at issue 436 because I really put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into that Jackie Fargo feature. And, of course, he's the babyface hero of my fandom. And I go into when he and Don Fargo were selling out Madison Square Garden as the Fabulous Fargos, and they came to Nashville in 1958. Gulas Welch had just started producing television wrestling on WSIX in Nashville in 1955. So this is 3 years into that show. And there was an amazing stretch there in 1958 where they had, I think, 18 sellouts at the Hippodrome in a row in Nashville that included either the Fabulous Fargos or the Corsican brothers, Corsica Gene and Corsica Joe. Those were the two big heel teams. And then, of course, the babyface teams were the Welch, some combination of the Welch brothers. And the last sellout, I think on August 24th or 27th, I can't remember. I mentioned it in the feature piece. But in that last sellout at the Hippodrome, it was Roy Lester and Herb Welch on one side of the ring, and Jackie and Don Fargo, along with their brother, who was their manager. He usually dressed in a top hat and tails and a tuxedo at ringside, but it's the first time he made an in-ring appearance of Roughhouse Fargo. And it was a 6-man tag in that last sellout of the 18 sellouts in a row at the Hippodrome. Also in that whole stretch there from May to around August, the end of August, 2 other amazing things happened for the Gulas Welch territory, Tennessee territory. One was the WSIX expanded the Saturday night television another 30 minutes. And so they were on live studio wrestling Saturday nights, WSIX, from 8:30 until 11 p.m. So it was the entire Saturday night you got wrestling in Nashville. And then also the announcement was made in late June, I believe, that they had just acquired the rights, the promotional rights for Memphis, Tennessee in that summer of 58. So not only were the Fargos and the Corsicans and the Welches selling out the Hippodrome in Nashville, they got an extension on their television show, another 30 minutes. They also had acquired the booking rights in 57, but they didn't start promoting it when they bought it from Les Wolfe until 58. And then they joined in with the American Legion Post #1 as the sponsor of the matches and the official promoter of the matches with them, because you had to be associated with a nonprofit organization in those days to promote a wrestling show. And John Regas was the president of American Legion Post #1. And John Regas, unfortunately, is a forgotten character in the history books of pro wrestling, but there through about the middle part of the 60s, from 1958 till around 1967, John Regas was the television figurehead. He would come out on television and he would promote the Monday night matches at Ellis Auditorium in Memphis. And just a fantastic run there in that period of time, led by the fabulous one, Jackie Fargo, who turned babyface in 1961. They did two different babyface turns. They did one in Birmingham involving Lynn Rossi, who was the #1 babyface in the territory at the time. And that led to Fargo and Rossi becoming a tag team, being the #1 babyface tag team through most of the middle part of the 60s, holding their version of the world tag team title. And then they did the turn in Nashville, where Lester Welch was in a tag team against the Green brothers, Don and Al Green, and Jackie Fargo. I think Jackie Fargo was in the tag team against the Green brothers, and Lester Welch came in and substituted and made the babyface save and basically turned Jackie babyface in Nashville. And he was the #1 babyface hero for the next 10 or 12 years, from 1961 till around 1974 or 75, when Jerry Lawler came back. And Jerry was a heel through most of the 70s. But Jackie definitely mentored him as the lead star and passed the torch to him there in 1974, when they had a great series during Lawler's quest for the title. This is all in that feature. So you need to read that in the Daily Chronicle because I'm really was proud of that. Tragos-Thesz Hall of Fame is coming up. And I'll be inducted, winning the James Melby Award for journalism, and I'll be going into the Tragos-Thesz Hall of Fame. It's one of the biggest honors of my career, and I am certainly thrilled and excited for that weekend to be coming up next weekend in Waterloo, Iowa. I'm also going to be doing a session there on Saturday, July 11th, about the greatest wars in pro wrestling history. And Greg Klein, who's just written a book on the Texas wrestling wars of the 1950s, will be one of my guests during the session. And my other guest, we're going to talk about the Texas wrestling war. And then the second part of my session is going to be about the Atlanta, Georgia wrestling war between the NWA and Ann Gunkel, who formed an outlaw wrestling office, the Gunkel Wrestling Enterprises, in 1972, when every wrestler walked out of the NWA office except two, including the announcer, the referees, the ring crew, the office people, everybody. And Roy Lee Welch was there working in the office. Of course, his father, Lester Welch, was one of the partners in the ABC booking office. And so Roy Lee is going to be there in Waterloo, and he's going to be my guest talking about the Atlanta Wrestling War of 72 to 74. So it should be a great session. It's 2:30 in the afternoon on Saturday, July 11th. And I want you to come and be a part of that. If you're coming to the Tragos-Thesz Hall of Fame weekend, we're going to have a little discussion between Greg and I about the Texas Wrestling War, and then a little discussion with Roy Lee Welch about the Atlanta Wrestling War, and then we'll open it up for your questions to me or my guests there on the panel. So I'm looking forward to that session, and I hope that you can be there if you're coming to Waterloo. Speaking of that, my Tragos-Thesz 2026 Hall of Fame series starts today, and I've got two great guests on the show. One of them is the Impact Award winner, which is James Beard, a fantastic referee. He's involved with the wrestling promotion down in Texas right now, doing a fabulous job and growing like a weed, Texas-style wrestling. And so James is going to be here in just a second. And my second guest on today's show will be Jimmy Garvin. And Jimmy is the Jack Brisco Award winner at this year's Tragos-Thesz Hall of Fame weekend. And I know you'll be looking forward to my conversation about that. Going back to the Brisco and Bradshaw history of Texas wrestling, I'm going to be talking about 5 guys for sure that I know of in that episode 3 that we've recorded by now and will be coming out on Thursday. Brisco Bradshaw dropped their shows on Thursday morning at like 6 a.m. And so on that episode number 3, I'm going to be profiling at least 5 guys, maybe more. But I'm going to be talking about Cal Farley and Dutch Mantell. And we're going to be talking about the years of 1900 to about 1925 in this segment in Texas wrestling history. And so Cal Farley and Dutch Mantell, who would eventually be the promoters in Amarillo. I'm going to be talking about Carl Sarpolis, who was an amazing innovator in professional wrestling. Got a picture of Doc Sarpolis right here. That was his nickname, was Doc. There he is. Dr. Carl Sarpolis. And he was a wrestler in the teens in 1910 to around 1920. He eventually became the booker in Morris Siegel's Houston wrestling office. They formed a booking agency called the Texas Wrestling Agency, and they booked talent all across the state of Texas. They pretty much controlled wrestling in the state of Texas. And so we'll be talking about Dr. Sarpolis in that episode. We're also going to be talking about the 2 brothers who brought wrestling in, formalized, and brought it out of the carnival system and into the city auditorium in Houston for a regular weekly entertainment event, which had not necessarily been done before. It was sort of a one-off. It was part of the boxing. It was part of carnivals and athletic shows. But the Siegel brothers, Morris and Julius Siegel is the one that took the lead on it and promoted boxing in Houston and then brought in wrestling on a regular basis there at the city auditorium. And so just a little bit about Julius Siegel that I'm going to share on the Brisco and Bradshaw show, but I also wanted to talk about it today here on my own show. And there was I found an interesting ad in the Houston Chronicle, if I can find it, because I wanted to share it with you. Here we go. There we go. And for those of you who are watching video, you're going to be able to see this. But for those of you who aren't, I'm going to read it to you. But it's an ad that I found. Here we go. It's an ad that I found for Julius Siegel in the Houston Chronicle on July 24th of 1920. And it's "Vote for Julius Siegel" is the headline for the Office of Justice of the Peace, Precinct number 1, position number 1. And he says, "My record is as follows. I've lived in Houston about 12 years and believe I'm qualified in every way for the position of Justice of the Peace. My discharge from the United States Army reads, character excellent, service honest and faithful. While I'm in office there, I will be no prejudice shown for or against any religion or nationality, all being treated alike, and the duties of the office will be performed without fear or favor. As proof I do not try to shirk any responsibility of a citizen, I refer you to the Houston papers of August 27th and 28th, 1917, which correctly state that when the Negro soldiers were marching on the city, I was riding on a streetcar, and the motorman being shot, I took his place at the controller and brought the car into the city. This is not referred to as a boast, but to show that in a sudden emergency, I can think and act quickly and do my full duty as a citizen. Respectfully submitted, Julius Siegel. So Julius Siegel, who is bringing boxing in 1915 in Houston, and was the brother who was basically the tip of the spear in getting wrestling presented as a regular weekly attraction in Houston, is running for the justice of the peace here in this ad. So that caused me to think, I got to look into this whole Houston riot of 1917. And it was also called the Camp Logan riot or the Camp Logan mutiny. And it was one of the most significant racial conflicts in the United States during the period of World War I. As a matter of fact, it highlighted deep tensions between black soldiers and white civilians and police in the South, which was segregated at the time, which all happened in the spring of 1917, shortly after the U.S. entered World War I. The Army built Camp Logan in the northwest edge of Houston to train the Illinois National Guard. And to guard the construction site, the Army sent the all-black 3rd Battalion of the 24th Infantry Regiment, which was part of you may have heard of the Buffalo Soldiers. This was a battalion that was part of that Buffalo Soldiers outfit from New Mexico in late July of 1917. And Houston was very strictly segregated in these days. Black soldiers, many of them were from the South, and they expected better treatment in their uniform, but instead they got harassed just as bad, maybe more so, which stirred up a lot of segregation, harshness, and unrest. And so soldiers were often forced to to the back of a streetcar, even when seats were available in the white section. And racial slurs and abuse from white civilians and workers at the camp were common. Tensions escalated throughout the month of August. Black soldiers resented their unequal treatment, while many white Houstonians viewed black troops as a threat to the racial order. So about the middle part of the day of August 23rd of 1917, Houston police arrested and assaulted a black soldier. Rumors quickly spread through Camp Logan that the soldier had been killed, and then that night, a false alarm about a white mob approaching the camp caused panic. Soldiers broke into supply tents, seized rifles and ammunition, and defied orders. Sergeant Vida Henry, it might be pronounced Vida, I'm not sure, it's V-I-D-A, Vida Henry. About 150 armed soldiers marched from the camp into Houston along San Felipe Street into the 4th Ward. And for about 2 hours, they clashed with police and civilians. They fired on streetcars, police officers, and bystanders. 15 or 16 white civilians and police were killed. About 12 to 20 others were wounded, and 4 to 5 black soldiers died from the incident. The mutineers eventually dispersed or returned toward camp, and Sergeant Henry reportedly advised the men to slip back and then took his own life. So here's how Julius Siegel fits into this. He was of course, again, he's the pioneering boxing and wrestling promoter. He was not a soldier, nor was he in the military or in the mutiny. He was just a civilian passenger on this Houston Electric Company streetcar during the chaos that night. And according to these records he referenced in his political ad, Documents say that the streetcar's motorman, who was named W.H. Burkett, was shot and wounded by the rioters. And Julius Siegel, who was a passenger in the streetcar, took the controls and drove the streetcar safely into town. In that political advertisement that I showed you and read to you for the Justice of the Peace, he talked about that event, and he said that Houston newspaper coverage from August 27th and 28th of 1917 and described it as proof of his ability to think and act quickly and do his full duty as a citizen in a sudden emergency. He did not frame it as a boast, as I read to you, but evidence of his character and quick thinking under pressure. The civilian act of bravery during the riot was real and documented independently of his political ad. So the 1917 Houston riot was a tragic explosion of long simmering racial tensions between black soldiers expecting to be respected in their uniforms and a hostile segregated city, and resulted in significant loss of life, harsh military justice, and lasting historical memory. And Julius Siegel had a role in it. He was an ordinary citizen who stepped up in a moment of crisis in public transportation, and he later cited that when he ran for that Justice of the Peace office in 1920. And so who says wrestling promoters are not good people and won't do the right thing? Julius Siegel, wow, kind of a hero in that moment. All right, so I just wanted to share that with you, a little bit of history about Texas wrestling and about one of the brothers, Julius Siegel, who you don't hear as much about. You hear more about Morris, and we're definitely going to talk about Morris. Julius also played another really important part in the history of wrestling and involved another territory outside of Texas, and I'm definitely going to talk about that as well on episode 3 of the History of Texas Wrestling on Stories with Brisco and Bradshaw. Let's get to today's first guest here on the Pro Wrestling Time Tunnel Territory History Show, and it's my dear, dear friend. We've gotten to be very close the last couple of years. I think the world of this fella, and he loves dogs. At least his wife does. She's constantly adopting rescue dogs, and he's got a whole Texas house full of them right now. And so we may hear the dogs a little bit during our conversation. But let's go here at the Richards Ranch, where my first guest is this year's 2026 Tragos-Thesz Hall of Fame Impact Award winner, James Beard. Well, it's a conversation that I've been wanting to have for quite some time. We just spent some time together in St. Louis, and we're going to be spending some time together coming up in Waterloo, Iowa. It's always a wonderful time there. My guest today on the Pro Wrestling Time Tunnel is my dear friend, James Beard. How you doing, James?
Great to be with you, Tony.
Absolutely, man. I am so glad that you're here. For those who don't know, James is going. It's going to be the 27th annual Tragos-Thesz Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame induction weekend coming up in Waterloo in July, and James is going to be getting the Impact Award. Congratulations, man.
Well, thank you, Tony, and the same to you. That's that the Historian Award, the Melville Award is really it's special because that's a special thing for our industry.
Oh my gosh, when I sit there and I look at the guys' names that have won it before, and my really close friend Tim Hornbaker won it last year.
Right.
And we were sitting there Saturday night at the wrestling card, and I was sitting there helping him. They send those posters around for people to sign, and I'm holding his and I'm handing him a poster one at a time. He goes, "Well, you're going to be doing this next year." And I'm like, "You're crazy." I'm like, "You're nuts." I said, "You know what? I might be able to do it 10 years from now, but not next year." And I'll be, gosh, look what happened.
Well, you deserve it. I can tell you that for sure.
Well,
some of that stuff you did with the podcast with John and Jerry is just it's incredible. I listened to every bit of them. How many? What 10 episodes on one subject? And
we did the Welch family. We did 11.
11, yeah.
And we're about, and I don't think I've announced it, so this is as good as time as any. But we're getting ready to do a big series on the history of Texas wrestling. So,
Oh yeah, I know a little bit about that.
yeah, I know you do, and
Yeah,
we're going to
cool,
talk a little bit
cool.
about that today. What first drew you in to pro wrestling? What caught your attention and made you want to be around it at all?
Well, I think I'm like a lot of people, and I didn't have any connection to it whatsoever, family wise or otherwise. Lived about 90 miles away from Dallas, and back in those days, I'm getting on up there, so I can our TV. The first TV I remember us having was a little old black and white thing,
Mm-hmm.
And we had an antenna, and most days or most nights, sometimes days were a challenge, but most nights we could get some of the Dallas stations, and a couple of those. One was Channel 4, which was CBS, and the other one was KTVT, which is Channel 11, and both of those had wrestling on them. I think Channel CBS had a little studio wrestling program that a lot of people don't even remember that came from the Southwest Sports, which was the same as the Sportatorium promotion.
Yeah.
And of course, KTVT was the one on Saturday night that was filmed in Fort Worth. It was an hour and a half or maybe 2 hours. I can't remember now.
I think it was 2.
Yeah, it might have been. Yeah, and of course it was in black and white. Even if I had color TV, I could have seen it. But I can remember just as a kid, we sitting around watching it with my folks. And I don't know what made them care about it. But maybe it's just because it was the only thing on we could get. I don't know. But I watched it from the time I was just a little kid, and it was always fascinating to me. And I was always, after I got a little older, I was in athletics, so that probably enhanced that a little bit. And I never really. I mean, you have those little thoughts about how would it be to be a wrestler, like one of my heroes, like Red Bastien or Bob Ellis or somebody, the guys that were around at the time. And,
yeah.
And my folks actually took me to the Sportatorium a couple of times. I was probably, I don't know, 9 or 10 years old, something like that. And I'll never forget the way that thing felt, the smells and the atmosphere that was there. And back then I didn't notice that it was just a big old tin building, but it was something special. And then seeing them in color, and all this time I'd been watching it on black and white TV, and all of a sudden there they are live and in color, and it changed everything for me.
And
so I was a fan from then on.
And you had no idea that you were going to be working in that same building.
Oh, no, I had no idea. I mean, I might have had a little passing dream somewhere that that would be cool to do or something like that, and I probably wrestled a few teddy bears and pillows and that kind of thing, like a lot of guys do when they're younger, But being in the business was way off, and I was like I said, I was in athletics. I played most sports, and I got involved in music. That was something that just kind of came to me, and so it was kind of a pipe dream if I'd ever had it, And I don't know. I don't think I ever seriously thought that would ever happen until later on, and I met some of the guys that I'd watched on TV or got to know coming to some of the places I played music in Dallas, and they started. Of course, the conversation would always come around to wrestling at some point. They're interested in music, and I was interested in what they were doing. And some of them kind of had a feeling that I had a clue, because I can remember when I was even pretty young, watching it and dissecting it a little bit, not just like I'm a fanboy, like I think this might happen, or this would be cool to happen, or I can see what they're trying to do here, that kind of thing. So I don't know, something about watching wrestling made me want to look at it a little deeper, I guess, than just being a fan.
And most everybody has, one of the things I think is common is you end up having a relationship with somebody in the business, and that's the person that sort of ushers you in. Or who was your relationship with?
Well, there were several of them that would come around to the places where we'd play, occasionally, not every time, but occasionally, I get to know them here and there. So I got to know several of the guys, but Bruiser Brody's the one that really kind of told me, do this. Bruiser had a way of telling you things that you go, yeah, well, maybe if he's serious about it, maybe there's something there. And so I stuck my toe in the business for a little while, and I did work a few. They put me in a few shows here and there, and they're outlaw shows, I guess you'd call them.
Yeah.
And the next thing I know, I'm in the Sportatorium.
And what were you doing back then? What did they have you doing? What was your job?
Oh, they put me in the ring.
Oh, they did.
First time I did anything, it was refereeing matches. It was like throw it in and you get your sink or swim, and I don't know. I just had kind of a natural feel for it, I think.
Now, what'd you play in the band? What was your instrument?
Played keyboards and sang. I was a front man for nearly every band I was in. There was one band that the basic parts of it, 3 or 4 of us stayed together for 15, 16, 17 years, something like that. Few things changed, but mostly I was a lead singer and I played some keyboards. I played horn back years and years ago, but it made it really hard to sing and play horn at the same time.
Well, playing in Texas bars. I mean, so what were you
not
guys?
Not too many horn. Not too much for horn players in Texas bars. That's right.
Yeah, that's right. What kind of songs were you playing?
Well, I mean, I'm a guy. I grew up in the '60s, so we were all kind of rock and roll guys.
Yeah.
Classic. That whatever was on top 40 back in those days. But eventually we smartened up and figured out that if you're going to play in Texas, you don't necessarily have to have a fiddle in the band, but you do have to play country music.
You probably need to know a Bob Wills song or two.
Or something, yeah, something akin to that. So we started kind of moving that direction, and eventually we ended up working a lot of the big places, a lot of the big bars and clubs, and opening for a lot of acts. Worked for Charlie Pride's company, Chardon. They booked us, and I worked for I opened for just about every major act that you could think of coming through Texas back in the early '80s and even some of the late '70s. But in fact, we were playing it. Tim Storm likes to tell this story, and it's kind of a weird deal. But we were playing this one bar in Texas, and bigger club, and the bar owner, he would go out and book some acts that had like 1 or 2 songs out at the time. That a lot of them used to do that, and they'd commit them for like a year, like 2 or 3 bookings, hoping that they would have hit big, and they get them cheap then, when they came back. And we were playing this one bar, and the bar owner had booked George Strait after he had one song out at the time, I think. Yeah, I think it was just one song out. And we were standing around before the night started, and the bar owner, I think George said something like, well, how do you want us to do this or whatever like that? And the bar owner said, well, most of the people came to see these guys, talking about us.
Yeah.
They didn't know who George Strait was, or a lot of them didn't. And they said, so if you don't mind, just open up for them. So I can honestly say George Strait actually opened up for us one time.
Oh my gosh!
But that's the kind of crazy stuff that happened back in those days,
Yeah, and the whole urban cowboy thing was exploding too, and
yes,
it was making all of that. I mean, it's always in style in Texas, but it was really making it in style all across the country back in
absolutely,
those days,
yeah, and of course he turned out to be I guess as big a star as you could ever dream of, but yeah, and that happens sometimes. We'd open for guys like Randy Travis and Steve Warner, and I can't remember everybody, but worked with a lot of them, and it was an interesting little run there for a while.
You mentioned a name, and I don't want to go too far away from it because I really want to get your thoughts on it. You mentioned Red Bastine. And
yes,
you and I have talked about Red before, just in our private conversations. Tell everybody a little bit, because he's one of those guys that we've gotten far away from in history that is not remembered as well as he should be today.
It's a shame.
What was special about Red?
Well, I mean, of course, as a kid, I watched him. He became kind of one of my first heroes. And I think a lot of it had to do because of his athleticism. He was different. They call him the flying redhead. And he literally did that. I mean, some of the things he did were just not seen typically in wrestling at the time. A few guys could do those things, but not very many. We see it all the time now. It's just one spot after another. But back then, Red did some things that it was just special. And I think that probably drew me to him more than anything as far as a hero type thing goes. And then, after later on when I got to know him and he became really one of my mentors, I found out just how smart he was.
Yeah.
He's one of the great booker, just an intelligent guy and really probably one of the best ambassadors for wrestling and that's ever been. After he retired and he was the president of the Cauliflower Alley, he would go all over just visiting guys, just show up, and I'd get calls from him from who knows where, sometimes just out of the clear blue. And he'd just say hi, how you doing and that kind of thing. But he was a special friend and a guy that I learned a lot from.
Yeah, I was going to say that, when the conversation turns to great bookers, you don't really hear his name that much, but you really should.
No.
You really
No,
should.
you really should. Yeah.
He was a Texas institution.
Yes.
He booked a lot of fantastic years there in the 70s for Fritz in the Dallas office. And, booked a lot of great Houston matches and was a great Texas heavyweight champion as well.
Yeah, several times. And of course, he and Red Lions were a great tag team.
Yeah.
Just an incredible person. One of the nicest guys you'd ever want to meet.
Who were some of the other people that you really enjoyed working with? Because when you broke in there around that, it was about 40 years ago, right around 1986, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I mean, so when you broke in there, I mean, the world class was, on fire. Who did you like? Who'd you like being around back then?
Well, I think the promotion had I kind of missed the really huge part of it because it was so hot back in 83, 84, 85. And then some things happened. And of course, David's death and Kerry getting hurt and all that stuff. And so I really kind of missed out on being a part of some of the biggest parts of it, but it was still, it was still cooking.
Yeah.
And I always enjoyed working with the technicians. The guys that really knew how to put a match together, and they were just so much more fun to me. Of course, I enjoyed working with the Von Erichs and the Freebirds and all those guys. They were wonderful. But I guess I don't know what it was about it, but I just always enjoyed the technicians and the guys that really were fun to work with that maybe weren't the top, the top stars there at the time, guys like Gary Young or John Tatum. I mean, they were stars, but they weren't working at the top usually. Black Bart, guys like that. I don't know. I've always gravitated toward that.
Of course, back in that time, kayfabe was still big.
Yeah.
And so a lot of referees back then carried the finishes between the guys and this, that, and the other. Was that something that you did?
Yeah, no. Did you ever go to the Sportatorium?
No, I was never in there.
Okay, it's a lot of people don't know how it was all laid out and everything. The Sportatorium had two exits or entrances for the baby faces and the heels. One went down one aisle, one went down the other aisle. But there were inside there was just one big, huge dressing room, and there were two or three other little rooms around, like booking rooms and that kind of thing, but offices. But for the most part, everybody was in that one big place. So that really wasn't so much necessary there. There were places I worked at it was, like in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you'd be on this end of the building and then go to the other end of the building.
That's right. Yeah.
You know,
I was in there a lot. I was in that
yeah.
building a lot. So
Yeah, and when I worked in Japan, it was like that. You know, we were very separated. So I'd have to kind of make my way one way or the other and get things across if there was anything to get across. Sometimes they just tell you get in the ring and do this, you know? But yeah, I've had that experience several times in several places.
Who really kind of took you under their wing as far as being a referee? Like who mentored you in that, or did you just kind of go along learning as you went?
I learned by listening more than anything else. And I tell guys that all the time. I learned more listening than I ever learned in the wrestling ring. But yeah, I had guys like Skandar Akbar, Branko Lubitsch, around, you know, and when somebody asks me who trained me, I tell them everybody I worked with because that's really true. You know, I really learned from everybody, and some of them, of course, I learned to listen to a little bit more than others. But the guys there they were all very helpful. If you know, if they say, hey, you know, do maybe this or that or the other, but I don't know, Tony. And I'm not saying this to boast or anything, but I always had a real good feel for it. I understood positioning and pacing and that kind of thing. I don't know where it came from. If it came from athletics or sometimes maybe some of it was from music, you know, because all those things fit together somehow. I just always had a really comfortable feel in the ring from the very first time.
I've talked to Bobby Simmons about it quite a bit. He was a referee in Georgia for so many great years, and he said,
"I love Bobby, great guy."
He said, "I just learned to stay out of the way."
Yeah, well, that's the first thing you learn. Yeah, absolutely. You know, you definitely don't want to get in the way. I was always pretty athletic, so I could kind of ad lib a little bit sometimes, but definitely got to give them their space. Yeah.
And so for fans who are just kind of curious, I mean, you just go in there and call it like you would, like you just do what's natural as far as these are the rules that wrestling is governed by, and you just enforce them, right?
I tell guys all the time when I get in the ring with them, if I've never been in the ring with them before, I tell them, look, I work this like a shoot, you know, and I've shocked a few guys a few times, you know, that weren't used to somebody who would maybe get on them a little bit more than normal or be a little more aggressive with them sometimes. But then when they figured out that I was trying to help them, it all worked out really well. I work it exactly like a shoot. If a guy does something that's against the rules and he does it in front of me, I'm going to get on him. So
if you counted guys out, and that was
yes, I have,
and that wasn't the finish, but that was
absolutely. I've changed a couple of angles because of that. Yeah, and the good thing about it back in those days is that the people who were booking and ran things supported you.
Yeah.
If you did that. If you did that today, I'm sure you probably get fired some places, but which is a shame, really. I've always had the support of the office, and that makes that a lot easier.
Well, if you think about it, if you count a guy out, if he don't get back in by the count, or if he don't get his shoulder up,
right,
that just increases the legitimacy of the sport.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, or it doesn't break when I tell them, you know, if I start counting, and you know, and I always allowed guys to get their heat. And I tell guys, I always tell the heels, you know, if you'll just work with me, I'll give you plenty of opportunities to get heat. You know, whether it's my positioning or whether it's my timing or whatever. You know, if you get a guy in a corner and you're doing something that's illegal, I'll work with you a little bit, trying to get you to break it, to give you a chance to get heat. But when I start counting, you need to back off. You know, or you know that old thing where all of them used to pull their hair and that kind of thing. You know, and they do it right in front of you. You know, and I tell them, look, you know, if you'll give me a minute, I'll work my way around a little bit, and you pull his hair. And I don't see it. They're mad at you. They're not mad at me.
And,
you know,
and that's
fans aren't stupid.
And that's a real important nuance, James, that not to get the heat on the referee.
Yes.
Don't put the heat on the referee. Keep it on the heel.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
I would sell tickets.
That can get messed up.
Yes, it can, and it does all the time. Unfortunately, these days, I don't think half of them even give a second thought to who the referee is or what a referee's role is. And of course, a lot of times the rules don't mean anything anyway, because in one match it looks like it means something, the next match it doesn't. That's one of the things that what I try to do in Texas when I'm in charge of something, is make sure that there's some consistency there, and that if the rules are always the rules, no matter what, unless we do a stipulation or something, and that's that should be something special, not something you do every night.
Texas has always had the reputation of being a snug environment. I mean, of the way the matches were worked.
Right.
And you also mentioned working in Japan.
Yes.
Was that pretty similar?
Very similar. Yeah, I felt really comfortable over there because the style was very similar. Some of the difference was that a lot of times in Japan there wasn't anything called here or there. It was just you just catch and catch can. You act and react. And sometimes in Japan, one of the differences is they would do all that all through the match, and then they'd have a finish that lasted 5 minutes. It was just a whole bunch of things going on. But in Texas, it's usually a lot more simple than that. But as far as the style goes, it was very similar. It was a very snug, very believable, and that's what I tell guys all the time when I'm talking to them, especially our crew, even our crew now. I'll tell them, look, guys, I don't care what style you work. I don't care if you're a brawler or a high flyer or a technical guy. I don't really care, as long as whatever you do is believable. If it's not believable, I'm going to get upset. And that's really what Texas style wrestling is.
Yeah. Mentioning that we're going to get to that famous name that you've brought back here in just a little bit. Well, we've talked about it just in our conversations about the Iron Claw movie.
Yes.
What was that whole experience like for you?
Oh man, I tell you, it was so unique. I'd done a couple of TV shows, and I'd done some commercials and things, but making a movie is a whole nother ball game. The whole experience. There's a lot of sitting around waiting, that kind of thing. It's true. But to me, it was all really interesting. I never got bored with it because the whole process just fascinated me. But that movie in particular, because I knew the guys that it was about, and because I had experienced a lot of the things that were in the movie, even though the movie was not historically accurate as far as timelines and as far as some of the things that happened, that kind of thing.
Nor was that the purpose of the movie.
Absolutely not. No, I tell people, if you want a documentary, watch a documentary. This is a movie, and really, and I talked to Sean Durkin, the director and the writer, about this. The movie was really about Kevin and about his issues with being the older brother left and kind of getting bypassed, when opportunities came up, and also dealing with a relationship, and also dealing with his father and all that kind of thing. Now, some of those things weren't exactly the way they happened, but that's what the movie was about. It wasn't really a wrestling movie. Yeah. It just had wrestling in it and wrestling people in it. And if you just sit back and watch it, if you can do that, not as a fan or a historian or anything else, and just watch the movie as a story and forget that any of it's supposed to be based on anything real, it's an incredible movie.
Well, it's very difficult for wrestling fans to do that,
Yeah, I know.
Now you and we've talked about that. I mean, the whole purpose was to tell a dramatized story.
Absolutely.
And I actually, when I went into it, I was going into it for that, thinking, this isn't supposed to be a factual documentary. This isn't right. This is just taking one of the most fantastic stories in the history of pro wrestling and turning it into a dramatized
Yes.
thing. Which, if you
That's
look at it that way, I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, it got great reviews. Overall, it got really good reviews. There was a lot of talk even about it being nominated for some awards, but the release date came so late. I think that hurt it some for that. It was, Zac Efron did an incredible job as an actor. I mean, yes, he looked different and obviously there are things in there that weren't exactly the way things happened with Kevin,
well, of
but
course.
as an actor, he did an unbelievable job.
Your book is one of my favorite wrestling books, The Third Man, and
Well, thank you.
there's so much in there
Thank you.
that I learned. I learned so much reading your book about the referee's perspective. What did you really enjoy when you were putting that book together? What was the part of it that you were really proud of?
Uh, well, of course, I have a lot of passion for that role. So that chapter in there that I wrote about the referees meant a lot to me, even though I think a lot of people ignore that these days. I hear from a lot of referees who read it and they just love it because it actually gives them that I guess that pride of being that part, that role, even though they don't get to do it that way a lot of times. They understand that that's the way it's supposed to be. I think some of it I enjoyed was kind of telling the positive side of some of the guys that I knew. Not I didn't try to write it as an expose. There were
Sure.
a lot of things. There were a lot of things I could have written in that book that probably a lot of people would have really enjoyed reading and gotten off to. But that's not that wasn't my point.
Yeah.
I wanted to try to tell and still be honest and try to be as positive as I could be about most of those guys. There's some stories in there that a few things were hard to write. The Chris Adams thing for
Yeah.
one. Because Chris and I were very good friends. But he was a flawed guy. And he had some demons. The thing that made me feel good about it is Jeannie, after she read the book, she gave me a call. She said I just want to thank you because you really told it the way it was. Without trying to bury Chris.
Of course.
There,
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of things I really enjoyed in that part of that book itself. And being able to kind of express my feelings about the guys that kind of got lost in our business. There was a time when the territory started dying and Vince started kind of taking things over. WCW was there and all that, the cable companies, and a lot of guys just left the business, or they started working, part time in it or something like that, and a lot of things didn't get passed along like they used to be. There wasn't any such thing as a wrestling school back in those days.
Oh, of course not.
You know,
You on the job training.
Yeah, on the job training, and you'd have one guy or two guys somewhere maybe that take a guy and work with them and that kind of thing, but not wrestling schools, not like you have today. And I'm not saying anything negative about them at all. There's some very good ones, but a lot of the language and a lot of the history kind of got lost to a whole generation of guys, and some guys kind of took a lot of guys that probably were just fans before ended up getting into the business either as trainers or promoters or sometimes wrestlers, and they didn't really know all those things. They didn't get trained that way, or they didn't get exposed to the things that we used to get exposed to by professionals. And so a lot of things were lost in that little period of time, and it's amazing that so many things even made it through that.
Yes.
But I kind of wanted to give a nod to some of those guys that hung around and tried, and there's a little bit in that book about that too. That I was kind of happy to be able to do that,
Yeah, it's one of the
even though a
things.
lot of people probably don't even understand what I was doing.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the things that's important to me too. Like beyond just the historical facts about the business, I really like showing people that these people are real people.
Yes,
So many times in the entertainment business, whether it's music or movies or wrestling or any of that, these people seem to be, these stars, let's say, they seem to be so far removed that if they were really your friends or you really knew them, you wouldn't talk about them the way you do, and
yeah,
and you wouldn't spread the things that you spread about them.
yeah,
But
yeah.
when you get to know them as people and they get humanized to you, I think it really helps people be more balanced in the way that they think about these folks.
Yeah, yeah, and social media has changed so much
Oh
of
my
that.
gosh.
You
Yes.
know, the it's that's a there's a lot of good things about social media, but man, it can be such a bad thing too. And when I wrote that book, and even that was in 2013, I believe, when it was published. And we think today that everything's really common, the way it is. But even that, just that far back, uh, social media was still kind of new to me. I mean, and I know a lot of people had gotten into it and that kind of thing, but to the early 2000s and stuff, I didn't know anything about it hardly, and back in the days when I was traveling on the road all the time, we didn't even have cell phones. So it's just such a different world now, and that being able to kind of tell the truth about some guys, instead of just rumors, that kind of was a good part of writing that book too.
Well, we talked about, and I want to bring it up again here in a minute. We talked about the Tragos-Thesz coming up here in July, but you're also a member of the Texas Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
What did that mean to you? I just got to imagine growing up as a kid in Texas and watching it when you were a kid and loving it and all of that to then be honored as one of the very few people who get put in something like that. I mean, that just
That's
probably
very,
was
very,
awesome, huh?
yeah, yeah, very special. Yeah, I mean, because I'm a Texas boy, and I got a lot of pride in that, and being a part of that is really it meant a lot. The thing the thing about that and really any honor, I've been lucky to have received a few things. Most of them are like promotional deals or regional things or something like that. I always tell people that if it's given to you and it's sincere and and they're doing it in the right way, then all of them mean just as much. That's kind of a lie, but it's true in a way too. I mean, yeah, there's some that have to absolutely mean more than others, and that would be one of them. And of course, this one coming up, that's a whole nother level. And the Cauliflower Alley thing
Yeah.
that was really special because it's a industry wide recognition, and I'm standing there in front of literally in front of some of the greatest names in wrestling, and a whole the WWE had bought two or three tables right in front of the podium there, so all those guys were sitting there, and I'm just that was amazing as well.
One of the things I've noticed, because I get asked all the time, like, oh, wow, you get to work with Jerry Brisco and JBL. Like, what's that like? Well, one of the things I've noticed is you and Jerry don't quite go back and forth on Texas and Oklahoma quite like Jerry and JBL do. Like, so
I,
when,
the,
when
I
I,
can't hold a candle. Yeah, I can't hold a candle to John about that.
oh my
And
gosh.
it's so much fun to just sit around and watch those two. It's like a couple of kids.
Well, when people say that, like, y'all have so much fun on the show when you're on there, I'm like, well, if you think that's fun, you ought to be part of our text messages. I mean,
Oh my God, you should, yeah, or just hanging around them. It's
yeah.
it's unbelievable. Yeah, yeah, and they're both just brutal with each other. And if you know them, you know how much they love each other,
Oh, very much so.
And it's so much fun just to hang around with them and hear that stuff. And that's why I don't get involved in it that much. I'll get a little zinger in once in a while, but for the most part, Jerry tries to use me to get to John sometimes. He'll say, hey, what was it like when he was a greenhorn? He did this and he did that. And I got a few of those stories too.
We're getting to do this history of Texas wrestling, which I know without a doubt it ain't going to be long. We're going to have a history of Oklahoma wrestling too. I mean, because that ain't going to fly. But anybody who's ever got a message from Jerry along those lines knows he has a special way of spelling Texas, and so
and pronouncing it.
Yeah. So he writes. He goes, "I can't believe we're going to do a history of Texas wrestling."
Of course, John would come back and say, "Well, you can't spell very well when you're sending things with smoke signals." so it's those guys they never stop.
I love those. I love them. They're such good friends of mine and yours too. I know.
Yeah. A few years ago at the Tragos-Thesz, Jerry had he'd been traveling and he got sick and just passed out. I was sitting right next to him. John sitting on the other side of him, and we thought it was something really, really, really bad. Like a heart or something like that. I ended up calling the 911, and John took care of him. He hardly left his side that whole time. So that shows you that other side of it too. So it's.
We got such a great class this year. Jeff Jarrett is going to be going in.
Yeah.
Jimmy Garvin is going to be going in. The entire Welch family, which the Ron Fuller will be there, and Roy Lee Welch. I'm actually going to be doing a session this year on Wrestling Wars. We're going to be talking about the Atlanta Wrestling War. Roy Lee Welch, who worked in the office in Atlanta during the Wrestling War, he's going to be there as part of my session. So we just got such a great class this year, as it is every year there in Waterloo. But, of course, because of this and because you're going into it and I'm going into it, this is special to me. But what's your feeling? I know it's special to you.
Oh, it's unbelievable. I got involved with the Tragos-Thesz Hall of Fame in that weekend several years ago, mainly from Troy Peterson and James Jeffries, and those guys that in fact I think I met them at Cauliflower Alley in Vegas, and James was such a big fan of World Class and Kerry Von Erich and all that. He even named his son Kerry Jean. So
really,
yeah. So they invited me up, and I went the first time, and I was hooked. It was special, and Jerry got me more involved in things. As pretty quickly after that, and it just became kind of a passion for me. That whole weekend, that whole experience. And when Jerry told me that I was going in with this honor, it was just I can't even tell you it's as special as anything I could ever think of in this business. It's almost like the cherry on top of the cake.
You were around back in those days. It's just breaking into the business and around that whole situation. Of course, you were around later on when they brought it back and everything.
Right.
But I mean, you were close to the family.
Yeah.
Tell me what Fritz Von Erich was really like as a person.
Fritz was he was a no nonsense kind of guy, but not mean. He wasn't. And the movie made him look like he was. That was one thing about the movie that I know Kevin was a little upset about, and kind of bugged me a little bit too. But it is what it is. But he wasn't the pushy, domineering kind of guy that it made it look like he was. In fact, if anything, I think he probably he probably tried to hold the boys back a little bit, and Gary Hart was more the guy that was in control of pushing them, and rightly so, because he understood what the value was. Fritz wanted them to pay their dues and have to work their way up because he was old school. You know, he was one of those guys that believed that you had to work your way up. You know, and Gary saw the writing on the wall. You know, he saw that oh, these guys are gold, and Fritz was a little resistant to that. So the movie made it look just the opposite. You know, like Fritz was really the instigator, the pusher, the guy that wanted this and that. Now, but personally, I wasn't what I would call close to him or anything. And didn't deal with him a whole lot, but he knew what he wanted, and if he believed something, he'd let you know. But he wasn't a bad guy at all.
You mentioned Gary Hart. Tell me about Gary.
Oh man, what a smart guy! Unbelievably smart. I learned so much from him. He's another one of those guys that I learned from, listening and being around him, and I still pattern a lot of the things I do from him as far as booking and all is concerned. Um, just an unbelievable career path that guy had. You know, he tried to be a wrestler, but he wasn't really very good at it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't understand what a catalyst he was for the whole world class thing. You know, when Fritz realized that his boys were getting a little older and he needed to find a way to kind of distance himself from that Nazi evil German image that he had.
Yeah.
Gary Hart's the guy that he utilized, or Gary's booking utilized to get that changed over, and put Fritz in a different light with people. So Gary's a big part of wrestling history in Texas, and when it comes to that, because that changed everything.
Gary just was one of those guys where, I mean, it's amazing to me how a booker can be really, really effective in one area of the country, but maybe not in another one. But he had such a keen understanding of what a Texas wrestling fan wanted.
Yep.
And he was able to hold it out here at arm's length from them and just kind of sort of give them a little bit of it at a time,
Yeah. Yeah. Gary had a lot of patience. He was a study of contrast too, because, a lot of heels were always, loud and obvious. Gary was just the opposite. He was more he was more like a guy who he kind of talked you into trouble. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was almost a guy that a heel that you almost kind of like. I kind of like to like this guy, but I can't trust him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, sure.
And he knew how to play that off so well.
Well, like so many.
Well, that one of the
Go ahead.
one of the most under appreciated, I think, angles and turns in wrestling, really, and especially in Texas, was when Chris Adams turned. And a lot of people think, the thought is Gary did that. Well, Gary took him under his wing and tried to keep him as a baby face. It was Chris's ego that changed everything. And Gary thought, well, okay, we'll just go with it then. But he did it so subtly that it meant so much more because it was real. It wasn't just some guy influencing another guy. It was a guy taking a guy and kind of giving him the opportunity to be bigger than he was. And his ego took over, and Gary just kind of went, okay, here we go, but it was such an incredible way of turning somebody.
Gary had been under those days of Bill Watts and Eddie Graham in Florida, where Dusty had the big turn in '74, where Dusty was part of Gary Hart's stable, and
Right.
and Eddie allowed the crowd to turn dusty. Like
Yeah,
he didn't force it. He just let it happen. Sort of like what you're
yeah,
saying with Chris.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's so natural and it was almost like that's why it was so believable, and that's why fans were so emotionally attached to it, and which is what wrestling's all about. It's about making them care. And it was like hey, this is one of our heroes, and he's going off the deep end. Some of them wanted to blame Gary Hart for it, but it wasn't Gary Hart. It was Chris.
Well,
You know,
you mentioned earlier about how you learned and about becoming a better referee just by listening and watching
right?
and paying attention. And usually those are the attributes of someone who eventually, after you spend so much time in the business, you kind of eventually become a teacher yourself. And that's
Yep.
kind of where you are today. So tell us about the story of Texas style wrestling. How did that all happen?
Well, I had gotten involved in the creative side of things, the booking side of things, way back, even before a lot of people even knew that. Actually happened in Japan. It started there anyway, and it was always my goal to be on that side of things. That's the thing I was always most interested in. The referee role was kind of almost, in my view, was always kind of a vehicle to get to that at some point. And also the reason I didn't go and work for a lot of the other like WWE or WCW, I knew if I did that, I'd probably be a referee the rest of my life. And nothing wrong with that. I'm not, a lot of
No.
guys did, and I have all the respect in the world for that. But I had a different goal. I wanted to be able to do that, to get in the creative side of things. And some things happened over in Japan that put me in a position to where I could do some of that. And also the teaching thing happened over there. Tim Storm will do clinics, and Tim Storm will tell people that I wrote the book of wrestling in Japan, which is a real stretch. But my second trip over there, um, I was asked to sit in the training center and write down every term, everything I could think of, even ring parts and moves, hold, everything I could think of, and they would translate it into Japanese to help train the younger guys when they're working with. A lot of wrestling holds are in English anyway. A lot of moves are in English because they don't have words for them in Japan.
Yeah.
So that was to help teach these young guys, when they're working with somebody from that spoke English, or even anybody that learned regular wrestling terms, how to relate. And so I spent 3 or 4 days doing that. I was amazed how many things I could come up with.
Well,
And
there were two big examples. Just to jump in here and interject something.
yeah,
There were two big examples I can think of bookers who also refereed. And one of them was Doc Sarpolis, who basically invented Texas wrestling. He was Morris Siegel's booker in Houston. He pretty much controlled most of the talent in Texas through the 30s and the 40s. He ended up
right.
buying the Amarillo territory. But one of the things that was interesting about him being a booker was he also refereed the main event. And
Yeah.
Leo Garibaldi used to do that as well. Like he was the booker in Georgia, and he was booker there in Texas for a while, and he was also the referee primarily in the biggest match of the night, which was the
Yeah.
big match that needed to be the payoff, right? And so there's
Yes.
so much about the referee position and the booking that I think is interconnected that it would only lead to you wanting to be someone who then went on to be a teacher
Well,
of.
it only makes sense if you look at all sports. Really, some of the best coaches are guys who weren't competitors, or at least they
Yeah,
weren't uh, high end competitors.
yeah, sure.
That because they sat around and listened and learned, and they studied it. They didn't learn just what made them get over. They learned what got the whole promotion or the whole team over. And that's something that I've seen happen so many times where some guy'd come in with money, and he'd hire all these big name guys to come in, and pretty soon the money's all gone. And main reason is because nobody could see the whole picture.
Well,
They would trust these guys. Yeah.
Yeah, Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson were just huge failures as coaches.
Absolutely, yeah.
But your Tony La Russas, big World Series winners.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and that's kind of been the history. I mean, there's exceptions, obviously, but that's kind of my thing. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to get into that side of it. I really hadn't planned on being trainer or anything, but I got it because I did that thing over in Japan. They had a one guy that had retired from sumo, and they were really concentrating on him and trying to get him ready to debut. And if you remember Hito,
yes,
Mr. Hito, yeah, he was the head trainer there. And Hito said, "Well, look, you get in the ring and with me, and we'll help teach this guy this and that." So I got in the ring with him. I'd show him this and show him that, and that started my training, getting involved in training. Pretty soon I was doing the same thing with a lot of the younger guys there. And then a situation happened over in Japan that Randy Savage was involved in, and I ended up coming up with a good idea that kind of popped over there, and after that they started kind of coming to me for finishes and ideas, and it just changed my whole way of being perceived, I guess.
Yeah.
And that also kind of translated over to the States. And so I was, even when somebody else was a booker, I'd be a guy that was pitching ideas or maybe tweaking things or that kind of thing. And I did that for a long time before I ever got the opportunity to just do it myself. So that was something I always wanted to do. And I've always had this goal of I guess, creating an alternative wrestling promotion that was a little more believable, a little more based on tradition. And I've come close a couple of times, and Texas style wrestling is the latest attempt at that. And right now it's going pretty well.
Now, here's something I want to get from you. So I'm a young guy, and I'm wanting to get into wrestling. And I know you have this Texas style wrestling. And so I'm wanting to get into the business. So I come to you and say, I want to be in pro wrestling. What's your response then?
Well, right now, what we're doing is before every TV taping, we tape once a month right now. And before every TV taping, we do a clinic.
Oh, nice.
And we'll have anywhere from 30 to 40 guys there. And I always, when I do this, when I write the TV, lay it out, I always leave a hole or two. And I tell them, if you impress us enough, we'll give you a shot on television. So that's one way of doing that. And that's happened a couple of times with a couple of guys that just became so dedicated that we just had to use art in Texas style wrestling. If you come to those clinics, or if you keep, if you just keep at it, with us and let us put eyes on you and work with you a little bit. And, I'm all about building new talent. I give guys opportunities that way.
If you think about it, when I was coming up in sports, that's how legit sports was done. You would go to a clinic, or for a football clinic or a baseball clinic or something, and they'd work with you a little bit. And they say, well, maybe you ought to try out, for the team or whatever. That's just such a smart way of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you don't make the team that time, then learn from it and come back and do it again.
Yeah,
then that's what we tell guys. And like I said, I'll leave that spot or two open on TV, and sometimes I put a guy in there because he impressed us and he fits the spot. Not this. And then another guy that I was more impressed with that I didn't put on TV, but I didn't put him on there because he didn't fit the spot.
Yeah.
But I'll bring him back and use him maybe the next time. So, that I always try to be honest with them about it. But there are opportunities to. I'm sorry, I got it. Okay. Okay, but anyway, we try to give guys opportunities. That's what it's about. Building new guys, and we got a few guys who have experience and been around a while, and have worked some major promotions and that kind of thing. But for the most part, we're using a lot of young guys and teaching them the way we want to teach them.
Well, what I love about that
Texas
is
style wrestling, a good place to start out.
What I love about that is it gives them feedback, and it either encourages them to keep going or it lets them know maybe this might not be for you, But
that's what we do. Yeah, that's what we do on matches too. If when they get through with the match and they come to the back, they get critiqued, either by me or one of the other guys that I trust to do that. So it's and we're part of the NWA now, so we've got that tradition thing, and I've always kind of been proud of the NWA, even though it's gone through it's gone through its ups and downs and that sort of thing. But I've kind of take a little pride in that, that we've got that tradition behind us, and try to use that as a positive thing for promoting.
Well, I think we're at a time where that's going to become, while the actual ways that the territories operated before, it will probably never be back. There's still a spot and a way for it to do what you guys are doing. I mean,
right.
I mean, there's plenty of interest out there of people who want that as well. They want that sports-based type presentation.
Absolutely, and there's kind of a hometown pride thing involved too. I think if you can get the people behind you and supporting you, the communities that you're working in, that's kind of what World Class was. That's why it was so popular. It became it was a hometown thing. It spread out and got really big, but that's where it started. That's where that huge push came from. Those guys were so big in Dallas, that you couldn't ignore them everywhere else.
Well, that's what made territories special, was the fact that they were uniquely for the people who live there.
Yes.
It was for Texas people, or it was for Carolina people, or it was for Georgia people, or Tennessee people. That and they didn't concern themselves with anything outside of that.
Yeah, you had your own champions, you had your own favorites and that kind of thing, and that's something I've always missed. Kind of, I think that's the one thing that the national promotion is this impossible for them to get.
Yeah,
really is. I mean, you got guys that become huge stars, but there's a pride thing involved there that you can't get with that.
Well, it's the difference between your local pizza place and going to a national, chain restaurant. I mean, everybody almost agrees that they'd rather go to the local place,
Yep.
But I mean, there's still going to be room for that national brand. It's just going to be limited because it can't be specifically for a specific people. And I think I think that's where your strength is going to be.
Yeah, in all honesty, I don't really care about being any bigger than that.
Yeah,
if I can get this thing in Texas right, or Texas and Louisiana and Arkansas and Oklahoma and that area, then if we get that support, then I think I've done what I intended to do.
Well, I'm all for you, brother. Go for it.
I appreciate it. It's how wrestling is. It's here one day and gone the next. But we're doing our best, and we've got we're on TV in all the major markets in Texas now on Saturday night in prime time. And of course we got the streaming thing like everybody else does, and there's another streaming that's tied to it that'll be online before too terribly long. That's even going to be bigger than that. So there's a lot of good things going for us if we can just sustain and get that whatever it is that hooks everybody and brings them in. I think once we do that, then we can keep it going for a while.
Well, Well, that's one of the reasons why you're winning this award. That's one of the reasons why, because you're having such an impact on not just on wrestling, but on your community as well. And so I'm just so proud for you to get this Impact Award at the Tragos-Thesz. And we're only a few. I mean, I see you on social media. You're counting down the days, because you like it.
Yeah,
you love it as much as I do. We can't wait because we're so many people there that we like, and we love.
That's the truth. It's like family reunion, really, every time you go there, and being able to do this in front of family and friends is even more special. And like you said, the fact that that's an Impact Award and not just a referee award, that it has a little more meaning, I think.
Yeah.
And it kind of, I always took a lot of pride in being a referee and being a good one. Hopefully one of the better ones. And that's something I'll always have a lot of pride in, but I also have a lot of pride in being able to touch people in a different way in this business, not just in the ring, but out too. And that means a lot to me.
Well, thank you so much for coming by and spending time with me here. And
absolutely my pleasure.
And as always, give my best to your wife, the biggest dog lover in the world. I mean,
I'll do that. I'm surprised she hadn't come out here and yelled at me about something already, but yeah, absolutely. I'll certainly do that, Tony. Appreciate you. Yeah,
I appreciate
I'm looking forward to seeing you. Thank you, man.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that visit here at the Richards Ranch with my good friend James Beard. I love that guy. And he is more than worthy and deserving of the Impact Award this year. I can't wait to be there in Waterloo and be a part of his receiving that. And I'm also excited that he and I are in the same Tragos-Thesz Hall of Fame class, and we will be for all time. And that's certainly a joy for me. And highly, highly appreciated that I am able to do that and be there with Mr. Beard. Okay, so I did a poll this week on the Pro Wrestling Time Tunnel Facebook group. And here's the poll. In an alternate world where there are no plane crashes, no injuries, or deaths, excluding Harley Race, in other words, take Harley out of this equation, who do you think would have been the most likely NWA champion after Terry Funk's reign ended in February 1977? And I put some prompts in there. I put Buddy Colt in as an option in the poll. I put Bobby Shane in. I put Nick Bockwinkel in, who's actually the current AWA champion at the time. I put Jerry Lawler in. I put Dusty Rhodes in. Steve Gennarelli, who joins me here on the show, added in Ric Flair. Christopher Goss, Todd Goss, who does the Jim Crockett Promotions show with me, added in Bob Backlund. Mark Logan added in Mr. Wrestling #2. Mark Matsuo, who contributes a lot of magazine scans and such on in our Facebook group, does a great job, added Johnny Valentine. And Rick Fields added Dick Slater to the poll. Here are some of the comments. Steve Gennarelli said, I added Ric Flair as he already had his coming out party and was sent to New York a couple of times to introduce him to the rest of the wrestling world. The Crockett's would have supported him. And Robert Black replied and said, I think that without the change of style, because of the crash, Flair would never had rose from mid-card. Let's face it, this guy doesn't scream face of the company or 19-time world champion. And Steve responded and said that's something we can all agree on. Kevin McCombs said, I believe Buddy Colt, while a heel, would have traveled well and would have been a Harley race kind of champion. Todd Goss says, if you look at the Missouri title picture and who's being brought to St. Louis on a regular basis in 75 through 77, if you take Harley out of the equation and former NWA champions, then Bob Backlund and Dick Slater are getting the biggest pushes. Rocky Johnson as well, but given his skin color and the era, it's highly unlikely he's in consideration. Bockwinkel is in St. Louis a lot as AWA champion, but he stated he wasn't interested due to the schedule. Colt, Shane, Dusty, and Lawler aren't being brought in at that time. Flair is on the ascent already, as were DiBiase and Patera, but it's still early in their careers. I think Bob Backlund is the most likely, which alters a lot in our alternate universe. And if not him, then Dick Slater. Howard Baum, who's on here with me doing the Florida shows, says, Buddy Colt was not a great interview, but he was definitely similar to Race in toughness and look, and very believable. Shane and King are too small for me as world champions. Bockwinkel could do anything and was an elite talker. He gets my vote. I agree with you on all that, Howard. Ricky Fields says, it was going to be Harley all along. And then I reminded him that we excluded Harley from the whole situation. And he said, it would pay me to read the entire post, my friend. We're all guilty of that sometimes, Rick. We just jump to the whatever it is we're looking at and we don't read the instructions. We just start putting the parts together without reading the instruction manual. Scotty Lech says, I say Bobby Shane just on the fact he was a proven draw in multiple territories already. So he was probably going to get more support from the committee for the same reasons I almost chose Buddy Colt. I really thought about adding Ray Stevens to the poll. Great poll. Looking forward to the podcast. I hope you're here with us, Scotty. Mark Matsuo says, I added Johnny Valentine because he could have had a one-year reign. David Brown just says Buddy Colt. Jimbo White says Buddy Colt, Bobby Shane were great heels, but in my humble opinion, he was too small to carry the world title. Ricky comes back, Ricky Fields, and says in 1977, Colt would have been good for a year or two. Shane would likely be considered too small and likely Booker down south. Nick preferred the AWA schedule in regards to money. Lawler wouldn't get 2 votes, much less the required amount. Dusty, Flair, Backlund not ready yet. But what about Dick Slater? I don't know if he was a Terry clone yet, or was he still establishing himself as a top guy in Georgia, especially with the new satellite feed? Here I'll give you my quick thoughts on this. I thought it was an interesting poll, and it got a lot of action, as you can tell, in the Facebook group. I always thought Buddy Colt could have been an NWA champion, if not for the 75 plane crash, where he got crippled and had to leave the business. He was injured and couldn't return. Of course, Bobby Shane died in that plane crash, which I also made an option here, but just because every time you talk about this stuff, Bobby Shane gets brought up by people. So I thought I'll just put him in there because I know people are going to bring him up. I think he was too small also to have been very credible in the world title picture. But he did get the most votes of anybody in the poll. He got 40% of the vote. I just thought Buddy Colt was on his way. He'd worked the powerful corridor. He'd worked Georgia. He'd worked Texas. He'd worked Georgia. He'd worked Florida. He'd worked a little bit in North Carolina. Those were the really strong block of people that typically had a lot of people on the committee. I thought his interviews were fine. I didn't think he was a bad interview. I didn't think he was necessarily stellar, but he ended up being the color commentary for Gordon on the Championship from Florida show. Nick was not going to do it, but this is just fantasy, alternate universe kind of stuff. He was making equal to or more of money, maybe equal to as AWA champion as was the NWA champion, and working like a third of the schedule. So he was happy with his workload and defending the title anywhere between 4 and 8 times a month, and working in tags a lot of times, and having plenty of time off every single month, and for the same money. So he wasn't going to trade that. Lawler was another one that I thought could have been NWA champion, and I understand why people say, he got a little stink on him because he never could get the votes or support. Jerry Jarrett really tried hard, and that's one of the reasons they pulled out of the NWA and went to the AWA, because when you have, and it's one of the reasons why Dusty got a short reign as NWA champion, and it's why Tommy Rich got a short reign as NWA champion. When you have a baby face that's that over and that hot, and in 76 going into 77, there wasn't a hotter baby face than Dusty Rhodes. He was doing the stand back headache powder television commercials. In 77, he was going for that string of matches with Superstar Graham in Madison Square Garden. The Championship Wrestling from Florida television show was being shown on the Spanish station in New York City, so people knew who Dusty was. So, and Dusty had been a draw in the AWA and through a lot of NWA territories. And he had just really started. I know he turned in 74. In 75, he kind of had a mixed bag of things that he was doing, including being a tag team partner of Superstar Graham in the AWA. But in 76, he really locked in and was really over in Florida, was really over in Georgia. He won the Georgia title at the beginning of 76 and was on a strong run. And so I do think he could have been the champion in 77 for a very limited amount of time. Ric Flair wasn't ready. 76 was the year he came back from the plane crash, and it was the year that he won the Mid-Atlantic title, which was his first championship. So he had a string of progression back in those days that they put you through. He had to win the United States title. He had to, then a lot of times, I don't know if he ever won the Missouri title or not. That's where Bob Backlund comes in. And Todd Goss has an excellent case for Backlund, although, and he laid out, I read his post to you, which great thinking. I mean, Todd's just a great wrestling history analyst. I love having him on the show. The only thing I would say is I think Vince McMahon Sr. has already communicated to the power brokers of the NWA, which is why Bob is getting this push into the Missouri title in St. Louis and also in Florida, is because I think McMahon has already communicated to Eddie Graham and Sam Mushnick that he's going to go with Backlund in 78. And so they're getting him ready and building him up. And I don't think that would have gone over if they would have said, oh, change of plans. We're going to make Backlund our champion instead of what you're planning. I don't know if that would have flown. Mr. Wrestling number 2, the NWA, and that famous angle with Dusty and the Midnight Rider, you find out that it's an NWA bylaw that masked wrestlers cannot be the world champion. So Mr. Wrestling number 2 would be out. As a matter of fact, they did a whole angle about that. If he won the world title, would he unmask? So it's a good choice, and he was really over in Georgia. I don't know that he was over necessarily in other parts of the country, but he was super over in Georgia. And, of course, Jimmy Carter's mother, favorite wrestler. Johnny Valentine, if he hadn't been in the crippling plane crash in 75, would have made an excellent NWA champion, I think. His style got over in Texas, and it got over in North Carolina. He had exposure in other parts of the country in the 60s. So I think Valentine could have done it if in this alternate universe of a perfect world, he wouldn't have been in the plane crash. And then Dick Slater, I think, was on target, and they put the Missouri title on him in St. Louis, I think in 77, 78, somewhere around in there. But that's also around the time they had that horrible car wreck with Terry Funk and Dick Slater and I think Tully Blanchard. But anyway, Slater got very, very, he got very injured And everybody that I've talked to or heard talk about it says he was never the same after the car accident. That the Dick Slater we saw post car wreck on the interstate in Texas was not the same Dick Slater of the 74 through 78 run. And yes, he did get over in Florida. He got over in Georgia. Jim Barnett loved Dick Slater and put every kind of title on him and gave him every kind of push in the Georgia territory. And of course, Eddie Graham did the same for him in Florida. And pre car crash, before he kind of turned into a Terry Funk imitation, Dick Slater would have been an excellent choice. So, in an alternate world where there are no plane crashes, no injuries, no deaths, and taking Harley out of the equation, who do you think would have been the most likely NWA champion after Terry Funk's reign in February 77? Feel free to comment on that poll in our Facebook group. Come over and join our Pro Wrestling Time Tunnel Facebook group if you're not a member. Or feel free to shoot me a comment on my X feed or in our Substack chat. I'd love to hear from you about this particular situation. Let's get to my second guest of the show. I really, really think a lot of this guy, and I enjoyed our first-time conversation as I hosted here at the Richards Ranch, Jimmy Garvin. We talk about breaking into the business in the late 60s. We talk about how he got involved in wrestling. It's a great story about how he got involved as a youngster with Coach John Heath in Florida, and the guy who took him over there and introduced him to wrestling. It was a friend of his dad's. And we talk about all of that. We talk about his work with his kayfabe brothers, Ronnie Garvin and Terry Garvin, and some of his very unique experiences as their very, very young manager in that three-man team who they don't get a lot of recognition today, the Garvin brothers back then. And I enjoyed talking to Jimmy, talk about Precious and her reluctance to get in the business in Texas when they had the big Chris Adams and Sunshine angle. We talk about all of that. He's the Jack Brisco Award winner for the 2026 Tragos-Thesz Hall of Fame. And I hope you enjoy this conversation that I had with my new friend, Jimmy Garvin. Well, the Jack Brisco Red Belt Award is named after the legendary Jack Brisco, an NCAA champion and two-time All-American at the Oklahoma State University, and, of course, also a member of the George Tragos Lou Thesz Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame. And it recognizes individuals who've made significant contributions to the industry in various roles. And this award's been around for 4 years. This will be the fourth recipient. Les Thatcher won it in 2023. Tony Gurria won it in 2024. Eric Bischoff won it last year in 2025. And this year, the 2026 Jack Brisco Red Belt Award winner is my guest today. Coming to me live here at the Richards Ranch, my friend Jimmy Garvin. Jimmy, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, my friend. Thank you for having me.
You bet. I know this is a special award. We've talked about it privately that, you know, Jack was your hero when you were coming up, and I know that this is a special thing for you.
Well, it would be anything would be an understatement to the feeling that I have in my heart over this. I mean, I love Jack and Jerry too. Both of them were always real good to me and real supportive. And I just have such fond memories of Jack, and just some good times. And I can't say enough good things about him, really, Tony.
What's the first memory that comes to mind about Jack for you?
I think just when I was younger in the business was just watching how he carried himself, during that time that he was champion, and just kind of keeping track of, where he was at, how he was doing type of thing. Not real crazy like, but, I always, if I followed anybody around or wondered how, they were doing it would probably be Jack, I mean, Jack was just a great guy,
Mm-hmm.
I can't say enough good things about him, really.
Well, your whole journey in this whole thing with wrestling and everything started in Florida, right?
Yeah, 106 North Albany. It sure did. I was 9 years old. Joe Scarpa took me down to the Sportatorium because they had a amateur wrestling program at the time. Eddie Graham's son, Mike, was in it, and a list of other guys. But that's when it all started. Sure
Yep.
did.
Bob Orton Jr. was,
Yeah, they
yeah.
came along after in that camp. The coach John Heath was our coach, and he stayed coach for probably just about the whole length of the program, I think.
Boy, there's a guy who I have never heard one bad word ever said about him as Coach John Heath.
No, I have to agree with you. I haven't heard anything either. He was always a good guy.
So, how'd you get connected with Joe Scarpa?
Well, in West Tampa, my dad had built a nice little apartment place. I don't want to say it wasn't like in a complex or anything. It was a big house, and the main house, and then there was an apartment above, and then apartment on the end, and there was a little cottage in the back. It was on some property, and it just so happened he would rent it out to two or three of the. There was the main house and the other three units, and he would rent them out. And at this particular time, Joe Scarpa and his wife moved in there and stayed in there for every time Joe was in Florida and came down to Florida for any length of time. They stayed there, and that's kind of what set it off from there.
Jack has gone on record. Jack Briscoe has gone on record saying that he learned how to be a babyface from Joe Scarpa. That Joe was one of the most amazing babyfaces in Southern wrestling back in those days before he became Chief Jay Strongbow.
Yeah, Don Curtis, Joe Scarpa, that era there, the great Malenko, names that Eddie Graham himself.
Yeah.
At the Fort Homer Hesterly Armory on a Tuesday night. I mean, I sell popcorn there too.
You did?
Yes, I sure did.
Oh, wow. How long did you do that?
Just maybe one summer.
Yeah.
I didn't do it a long time, but
you debuted in 1968, and you were only like 16, right, when you went
pro? November 1st, 69, actually.
Oh, 69, okay.
I think that's 69. I don't think that was November 1st, 69 in Arizona for Ernie Mohammed.
Oh, yeah.
For goodness sakes. Have you heard of him?
I have heard of him.
I know you've heard of everybody, but...
well, I have heard of Ernie Muhammad. There's not that many people that can tell anybody about that old Arizona territory, though,
No. Lord have mercy.
So you worked around there? You worked around Phoenix, and you worked Tucson. And, yeah.
And that was, maybe a little town in between, but those were the only two towns. And then I was getting like $25 a night or something.
And in Phoenix, they had Madison Square Garden, right?
Well, I don't know. I was always really.
So you started in Arizona. So when did you kind of fall in with Terry and Ron?
Well, because my father died when I was 12.
All right.
So then my mom remarried, and she happened to have married Ronnie. So that's kind of was the tie there. But then, we didn't get real close till later on, I guess, till after. But, Terry helped me out. He knew the people to call, and they called. He helped me a lot getting started.
And so the three of you were, you guys were the heels, right? You traveled together?
In Tennessee, that one territory, or was it Georgia? I can't remember. Tennessee, I think.
I think Tennessee, yeah.
Yeah. That was the time that all three of us were together. That was probably maybe one of the only times was that territory.
And you really started developing, though, when you came back to Florida, right?
Yeah. I think I go through I went after Arizona. I went to Alabama for the Fields.
Yeah, Lee Fields.
And I was trying to think of the grandfather's name, and it was just on the tip of my tongue.
Speedy Hatfield.
Speedy, yeah, doggone it.
Speedy Hatfield was a referee.
Yeah, and he was a wild one, but those were good times too. Those would have been like that would have been like 70, somewhere around 70 maybe.
And that was always a great territory because the trips were short and you got to
Oh,
live on the Gulf Coast too.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Then from there went to Oklahoma, for goodness
Oh,
sakes.
that's the opposite.
Leroy McGurk, and when he was alive, and of
Who
course
brought
Cowboy.
who brought you into McGurk's territory?
Shoot,
Was it Bill?
yeah, it must have been. It must have been because at the time I was managing too, so because I didn't have a big career wrestling, I was kind of small,
Hmm.
so mostly I managed,
And who'd you manage in Oklahoma?
Terry Garvin,
Yeah.
sure did.
And his programs were, who was he working with out there?
Shoot, I'm trying to think. I don't. Of course he. Oh, you know who he? I know who he worked with because I remember getting tangled up with him was Danny Hodge.
Oh my gosh.
And no less in Oklahoma City.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so that he's at home, almost his hometown.
Yeah.
Lord have mercy. And then with me being managing, and then Danny Hodge, the deal was if he beat Terry, he got like 5 minutes with me. You know the old thing,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah. Manager 5 minutes.
Listen, how would I have been? I'd have been, uh, I was like 18 years old, I guess, because I wasn't married yet. I got married when I was 19. So I was 18 years old, looking across the ring, didn't know my ass from my elbow. So excuse my language, and then there's Danny Hodge.
Oh my gosh.
Well, buddy, he turned me every which way but loose. I'm so proud. I've never been stretched so bad in my life.
The stories are legendary about Danny Hodge being able to crush an apple in his
Oh shoot! Yeah,
hand and
anything he wants.
yeah, break wire pliers in his
That was
hand.
horrifying. I think, I'll be 74 pretty soon. I remember that moment pretty good.
I bet.
Oh Lord, it was that I have to only laugh when I say that too, because I think about guys like that, Danny Hodge, and
Yeah.
I also think about one time in Kansas City, somewhere I was a little bit older, but still, and I had to wrestle Lou Thez.
Mm.
Well, actually, Lou Thez wrestled me, and it was horrifying. that was another one that, boy, I went to school. And I was a young guy, and that's all I can say is that was an experience.
I bet so. I bet
Shoot.
so. So how did Lou treat you in the ring? You remember?
Yeah, well, I remember. Do I remember? I still have nightmares, Tony.
Yeah, I bet so, man.
No, I'm just kidding. He was good, but he let me know, really, really, really fast how little I knew.
Yeah.
In a not so, he let me know, which that's good,
Yeah.
good. I'm
I,
good.
I I've always heard that he would start out just trying to figure out how experienced the guy was, or maybe he would ask before the match, who trained you? And depending on your answer is how the match would go.
Yeah, I think at that time he just looked at me and went, "Oh boy."
Yeah.
But those are two I remember well. I can't help but laugh about it,
Yeah.
But Oklahoma,
Did y'all
huh?
do that gimmick around the 5 minutes with the manager thing around, or was that just in Oklahoma?
No, thank goodness that we didn't do that around.
Yeah.
No, that was just like around Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma City.
But
Yeah, we didn't.
Terry was a heat magnet, right? I mean,
Yeah,
did you
Terry too. Terry
so
did get
so
some heat.
later on when you were a heel, did you learn from him, like watching him every night, or?
Kind of the psychology in those days. I learned really a lot at ringside because there was such psychology was so in depth. It was that you, you, you had to have it. There was nobody writing the script. There was nobody saying you got to do this at this time or that. And you know what I mean? You
Oh,
had to.
sure, yeah.
It was psychology, and it was between whoever was in there. It was a whole different ball game back then, I think.
And your abilities in psychology or your abilities to work with the crowd was going to be determining your paycheck.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
depending on how good you could use those psychology tools, the way you drew was your living. So
That and the fact that you also could really get into a dark spot if you got a little carried away with the heat. You might have some company in the ring, and we hadn't had that a lot of times. They just hit the fans would just hit the ring, and
yeah, there
hell would
wasn't
break
as much
loose.
security or ring barriers like there are now. I mean, you had
No,
the ringside chairs were just right there.
yeah, yeah, and the folks was into it back then too.
Oh yeah,
Like
especially I would
back,
imagine, especially down in those Louisiana towns.
Lord have mercy, New Orleans and everything like that. Man, I've been stabbed in the back. I've been shot at. Um, that's about that. Those are the two worst things, I guess.
You went to Japan
But
too, didn't you, in 1980?
couple of times went there in '80 with Hogan and Kern and all of us, and then Patty and I went back. Precious and I went back in '84
Mm.
over there for a little while.
How'd you like Japan?
I like Japan a lot. I'd like to go back just to visit. Obviously, to visit. That was I enjoyed it. It's one of my favorite countries actually.
Yeah.
That in Australia.
You remember who you worked with over there?
Uh, Not really. I remember I've worked with that one shooter. What the heck? Do you remember that famous shooter that was over? There were so many. All of them were shooters actually.
Would you work for New Japan or All Japan?
I worked for both of them.
Okay.
Each time I worked for one, and the other time the other. I can't. Fujiwara was one, and
Yeah.
that was for the first time. I think was that All Japan
Yeah.
Fujiwara maybe.
Would have been. Yeah.
Yeah, Fujiwara was one, but there was a couple of them. But I
Famous for the
learned
Fujiwara armbar. Um,
well.
I mean, it's pretty stiff there, right? I mean, the Japanese, they work pretty snug.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, boy. You don't. Phew, you work for your money over there. This depends too. I guess it depends. The way when I was pretty young, and I had full of my oats, so they probably thought, well, let's deal with let's have fun with this guy for a minute. I mean, they didn't abuse me, but you know what, I wasn't that serious.
Yeah.
I just Gorgeous Jimmy was not a serious character anyway, so maybe they couldn't get into that part, but that's okay. We had a good time over there, and I just missed the boat on it though. I should have had Precious slap Anoki,
Oh my
or
gosh.
kick him in the nuts, and we could have made a fortune.
Yeah. No doubt about it.
But I was too busy having fun, so I didn't care.
How did you? So I mean, I think most fans and people really became super aware of you when you went to Texas, and so that program out there in Texas was pretty fantastic in world class from in 1983. Was that the best stretch of your career? You feel like?
That was the we didn't have it. That was no speed limit, no time limit, and nothing. There was no rules. It was all straight ahead, go straight as hard as we could go. As far as the way Michael and I would talk about, the way we booked ourselves, as far as
Mm-hmm.
angles that we would do. Michael and I worked a lot with each other, and with especially my angles with the girls and stuff like that.
How'd you like working with David Von Erich? What kind of worker was he?
He was a great worker. He was a good guy. I worked with a lot with him. In Florida, he was a heel, so we just traveled together a lot.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, him and even Kevin, they stayed at they call it the Ivy Street Castle, but it was on Ivy Street. That's where that place where my dad built, and which later on, in life, I mean, so many guys lived there. John Studd lived there. Angela Mosca lived there. A lot of, because it was privacy. It was really nice. It has a swimming pool, and I mean, it was a nice private property, and which was suited the wrestlers. That's perfect. That's what they want. So I didn't charge them an arm and a leg. It was very, very affordable. So
You had a Precious before Patty, right?
yeah, I did. That was Dusty and Crockett and them. I think they didn't really. She came in through Eddie Graham and the boys down in Florida. Eddie Graham contacts and got hooked up. That's how she got hooked up with me. But that didn't last too long.
Right. She didn't.
That didn't get over. That didn't get over anyway at home.
Right. Then you started working with Sunshine. Now, is she related to you?
My cousin.
So how did that come about? Where you got
because I'd go on the road, and the girl would show up, and the limo would stop, and she'd come to the door, ding dong, and then here I go off to Miami or wherever I'm going for a couple of days, and a wife don't probably she what that wore out. That wore thin pretty quick.
I would imagine, yeah.
So therefore it became the cousin because it's my cousin. So
yeah,
it's pretty safe. Right?
And did she have any? I mean, she have any idea what kind of star she was going to become when she?
She didn't want nothing to do with that.
Yeah,
nothing to do with it. In Texas, I had to talk her into it. I said, "You got to do it." I said, "The gimmick and character's so hot that you just have to do it." And of course, she told me I don't want to do it 1,000 times, and then finally she did because she loves me so much. But,
yeah,
we'll be 57 years coming up.
That's month. Fantastic. That's fantastic, man. Good for you guys.
She's my baby. Yeah. So she did it for me, and it worked out okay. But wow, she was just stayed home and took care of me and took care of the kids one day, and then the next day she's on TV in Texas and fighting for her life in Laredo with me.
Yeah.
Because it was tough down there, and just for border towns. Patty and I go down there. Lord have mercy. Whew.
I bet you had to talk her into staying in. After you got her in, you probably had to talk her into staying in after all that, right?
Yeah. I just kept throwing as much money as I could find.
I mean, she's out there again. We're talking about now at the Sportatorium. They had the cowboy hat guys that did the security, but in a lot of those places, like I said, the security was thin, and she's out there by herself at ringside with the fans right there.
And we were in hot angles too, like with Chris Adams. Plus we were going to St. Louis with the angle, because out of Dallas we went to Kansas City and St. Louis. And I remember one time in St. Louis when I was wrestling Chris Adams, I always kept an eye on her. I knew where she was supposed to be, and I always kept an eye on her. One time I looked over there, and she wasn't there. And I thought, holy crap, where is she? Because I'm in the ring, she's sitting outside. So I start looking around, and I go look over there, and she's on the ground fighting with this woman. They going at it like hell, having a big fight. And I thought, Lord have mercy. This ain't going to be good.
Well, I just can't imagine what's going through her mind, because she says, I knew I didn't want to do this, but now I've got to do it, and I'm fighting for my life. So when you guys left down there, you had a loser leaves town cage match. Was it time for you to go, or how did that?
Yeah, no, it was time. It was time.
You said you guys pretty much booked yourselves, so that was your kind of idea, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was how it worked with us. And when I say us, I think Michael too. Is we in our mind we knew how long we could run this storyline out, and we didn't want to just run it into the ground. We'd run it good like a movie, and then we'd find a good exit, and then we'd exit with it. And that, in our minds, that's how the angles that we would work would come about. And that way, I already had AWA lined up, prior, and all that was going to be my next move. So we just timed it where it was right timing. Timing is everything, they say, and it's true.
It's true.
And you look at the overall territory too at the same time. But it's just a time. It was time. And when you think about it, when Michael and I left Texas wasn't. It didn't keep go. It didn't keep flying high like it was when we were there.
No.
Things like that are special anyway. They're not. You're not supposed to be able to fly that fast, that hard for that long.
Right.
It just don't work. Everybody's got a time.
And all the things have to come together at the right time too.
Yeah.
It's like you say, timing's everything. Yeah. Last year we did 1985 in the AWA. We covered that pretty extensively, and you had some really, really strong world title matches with Rick Martel before you and Regal teamed up. I mean, you were a very, very good challenger for him. I thought you guys worked well together.
We did. We real smooth guy, real smooth. Just a good head on his shoulders, a good athlete, and I did. We had some good matches, and I'm glad he's a great worker, and I was glad to work with him.
I always thought he was very underrated as a world champion.
Yeah, they could have pushed him harder.
Yeah,
they could have pushed him harder.
So you end up working with Mr. Electricity.
Yeah, boy. What
kind of guy was Steve Regal? We lost him last year.
I know. He was a great guy. He was a good family man. His daughters and his wife, and always talked about them. And he was a good little worker too. They didn't pay attention to him enough either. He could have done more, but yeah, he was a great guy. I loved working with him. Great teaming with him.
I went to some shows that Crockett did in '86, and Regal was there at the same time you were, and they were having him work with Denny Brown and guys like that in the first match or two. And man, Steve Regal could work. I mean, they would go out there and have a good wrestling match.
Yeah, he sure could. And we beat the Road Warriors too in Minnesota.
Well, I was gonna bring that up. I wanted to know though if when you went to Crockett, did he follow you there, or was that separate deals that got made
that was separate?
Just happened to be at the same time.
Yeah.
So you guys beat the Road Warriors for the AWA World Titles.
Well, I guess.
Well, they worked it out, so you won.
I sure appreciate that.
Yeah.
No, we were good friends with Hawk and Animal, and all them. We were just good friends with them, and I thought it was a great angle. They had to drop him anyway. So what two of the most unlikely guys would you drop him to?
Mm-hmm. And how are we going to figure this out, right? Because it's to keep it real.
Yeah, and then of course Michael Hayes was there. What didn't he run in and do the thing at the end? See, so again, that was just the right thing to happen. It didn't hurt that it did. See, the whole thing too was, how do you get the Road Warriors to drop the belts? Well, maybe to start with, but how do you get the Road Warriors to drop the belts and not hurt them?
Right.
So that there didn't even put a scratch on them.
Do you remember whose idea it was to do it that way? I always wondered that. Like, who came up with that? It was a slick little deal.
Yeah. Well, and probably,
Did you?
I wasn't in on that particular thing. So, but I would say Michael had something to do with it, of course, because Michael, that's what he lives and breathes, So he probably had something to do with it.
Still doing it today.
Yeah. I talked to him probably 4 times or 5 times a month, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm going to see him down here in end of July, because we've got the gathering, I think it's called.
Yeah, in Charlotte.
So him and I are, we haven't been there together in a long time.
That's a great event.
Yeah. So, but the Minnesota thing, yeah, I think that couldn't have worked out any better for everybody involved. I think.
Did you like your time there?
I did. It was a little weird, it was towards the end of the AWA kind of, it was winding down because it was losing all its talent to Vince, right? Am I saying that? Is that
Yeah.
history about right?
Yeah.
And they
Well,
were trying to.
everybody was at the time. I mean, most
Yeah,
people.
they were all going, but in there in particular. So now they were trying to make stars and try to carry the load and have the wattage that they had when they had Ventura and Hogan and Lord only knows the other great talents that was there at the time. So it wasn't it was okay, but it was the end. You knew you were working at the end of you were getting the last spark, and then I think that it truly ended up that way when the Road Warriors left and we left. I don't know. There wasn't much left after that.
Well, and then you go down to Crockett country and you find out that Dusty's going to put you with Wahoo, the big chief. You're going to get the big chops.
Yeah, boy. Well, it was a great
and you're going to end
guy.
up working in a strap matches.
Heck, yeah. I'm going to get the hell beat out of me again.
And you sure did too. I think I was at 3 of those.
Were you?
Yeah, in the summer of '86 for the bash. Yeah.
I'm so glad you got to see that because honestly, goodness, you won't see nobody get their ass whipped more than that
Oh my
than I
gosh.
did by Wahoo McDaniel and
Oh
that
my
damn
Lord.
strap. That just about to bring tear to my eyes almost.
Well, I can just,
Mm.
it kind of helps me understand what Danny Hodge put you through because Wahoo threw you around like a rag doll pretty much. I mean,
Oh
you
boy,
bumped your butt off for him, but
he was thick.
yeah, oh yeah,
He
and
was,
winding down close to the end of his career too, but still, I mean,
yeah.
I think that was his last really kind of big run there.
I think it was. I think it was the last big angle, really. And with Patty there too. I mean, how classic. There's that's almost a classic shot in my mind is the Chief and then Patty poking her finger right at him.
Yeah.
And boy, that was a moment there.
Uh,
That was a heat getting moment.
oh yeah, his face. I can remember his face, just kind of breaking out red. Just being
Yeah,
mad.
because everybody in the world has seen that wanted him to do something.
Yeah. Well, they had seen Dusty do something to Baby Doll too, and so they
Right.
just I kind of thought that oh my gosh, the Chief he's gonna do something with her.
Well, you know what? You remember Magnum is the one that turned her over his knee and spanked her.
Yeah, I do.
Because see, Magnum and I, which I talk to him every week here. He lives in Charlotte too, and we talk all the time. And we were getting ready to have a really big angle with Patty and me
We just talked about that. He was just on the show a couple of weeks ago, and
okay. Well,
I had him. Well, we didn't talk about it in detail, but he and Nikita were on because we were talking about their best of 7 series. But what do you remember about it?
I had his last match in Greenville, South Carolina that night,
Yeah.
and worked with him throughout the territory, getting ready for the thing with Patty and all of us and stuff. And that was just going to be, that was really going to be huge. It really was going to be huge. But
Yeah, I always thought the way that '87 kind of turned out, it was sort of missing something because Magnum was supposed to be in the mix with all that, right?
mm-hmm.
And it ended up being Flair. I mean, it wasn't supposed to be Flair at the beginning. Was it supposed to be Magnum?
Right. So they put Flair in, and we did, which was okay too. Flair's such a character, such a gimmick, right? So that worked out okay.
Yeah, yeah. What what do you remember about? I mean, did Dusty talk to you much about that? What you were going to do
Dusty
with
and I
Magnum?
didn't talk much. Dusty and I didn't talk much at all.
You didn't.
You know
Okay.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. You didn't
We didn't hit it off
didn't
good.
hit it. That's what I was trying to think of.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and don't ask me why. I think, to be honest with you, I'm thinking about it because I knew him in Florida too,
Well, that's what I was thinking.
right? So, but I did know him in Florida. I knew him well. So I don't know. We clashed. Unfortunately, I don't know any other way to say it. I know that when I got on TBS and I was doing those interviews,
Hmm.
that with if I mentioned his name or something, or when I was even doing him with Terry, when I had that angle with Magnum. Remember, I talked poop about uh, Dusty and Magnum, and I would say some pretty rough. I would say some pretty rough stuff, shooting kind of,
Yeah.
and he knew I was shooting, but I didn't care. It was kind of funny. Some of the stuff I thought was kind of funny, but
But I mean, even though you might have been upsetting him or maybe hacking him off a little bit, I mean, still in '87, I mean, you were at the top of the cards. I mean, you were working with Flair, and you guys had that big angle with Cornette where he threw fire at Ronnie's face, and
I
that kind
turned
of
baby.
that turned you.
Yeah. No, that was hot. That was hot. There was no doubt. But there was always, there was, yeah. It was okay. It was okay. It wasn't a fun time. It wasn't because it wasn't fun doing. The Office wasn't exactly. Jimmy Crockett didn't have the greatest personality.
Oh,
you
super
know.
super dry.
Oh yeah. So it was contagious or something. I don't know. I don't
Well,
know.
I think there's a thing that when we're talking about executives in a company, we talk about them getting hubris of success, where they just start thinking anything they do will work because they've had a good year or whatever. And that '86 was such a great year
Hmm.
that I just feel like that going into '87 and '88, they just kind of lost their way a little bit because they had such a great year the year before. Um, I always was. It was always interesting to me that obviously in kayfabe and in storyline throughout the years, you and Ronnie were always brothers, and I always thought that was interesting. You were a heel and he was a babyface, and you guys never really. There wasn't any cross things between you or anything all that was until the Cornette angle.
Right. Well, we were never really that close in private life either. That close.
Hmm.
I mean, I talked to him too today. To this day, I talk to him at least a couple of times a month. But still, talk.
Sure.
But business wise, we didn't really. We had that angle with him and Flair and me and Patty and all that kind of stuff. But we didn't have it. He was my stepfather, but that was all there was never a relationship there.
How'd you like working with Flair that year? I mean, you're in a cage match at the Bash for the NWA World Title. Um,
Yeah, yeah, it was okay. It was all right. It was okay. I, you know, and I don't want to sound silly about it, but I don't know. I mean, I enjoyed much working with the Chris Adams or those guys. You know
you
Flair
could
was okay.
you
I did.
you matched up and connected with Martel better.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I knew where things. In Crockett territory, I knew how long the rope that I had was on. I knew how long the rope was.
Hmm.
And in the AWA with Martel, there was no rope. If you understand, I mean, to me,
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
just I knew sooner or later that I was going to be running, and then I was going to have to be stopped because the rope was going to run out.
Did you get hurt during that match?
No, I was. It was that was the angle.
Right.
It looked like
But it
it looked
was
like
you were working.
yeah, yeah. It looked like I blew out a knee or something like that.
It did. It looked.
Yeah, yeah. Which I have. Both of them have been operated on, but not that night.
You did a great job because
Well,
I could have sworn you got hurt.
yeah, no, no. Thank goodness I didn't. But Lord, like I said, I've had both of them worked on. They're still good though. They're hanging in there. You know, I had my back fused. And the list goes on and on and on.
Well, that's the second question that every wrestler asks another wrestler. Well, the first question is, "How you doing?" And the second question is always, "How's your body?"
Yeah,
And then you get the list of aches and pains and surgeries. And
yeah. In fact, I just came back from the chiropractor today. You know,
I
but
I don't know
you
what
know,
I'd do without my chiropractor.
yeah, yeah. Every day's a gift, and most things don't matter. You
Yeah,
know,
that's
and
right.
I've just got to enjoy life.
Well, if the Flair angle and all that wasn't sort of personal, and he's wanting to go out on a date with Precious and all that. I mean, then you get a Kevin Sullivan coming in claiming he's got a past relationship with her or whatever. I
Yeah, that
just,
was a great angle. Now that
yeah,
was one too that we could pretty much do. We weren't confined as hard. But then again, remember, it can only go. Here's the. I don't know if there was a book about this. This would be the title. I guess it would be when I did the thing with Kevin, and then we had the big confrontation at the ringside, and guess who came out and took over the angle and the heat? Dusty. Remember
hmm,
that one?
yeah, sure, yeah,
Remember he came out. You know,
I sure do.
I guess when you can't get your own, you got to get it from go rob it from somebody else.
That's been told a few times for sure. What? But that you're right. I mean, I thought when I was watching it in real time back in the day, I thought that whole storyline with Kevin and the way. I mean, Kevin's just a great worker, and
Mhm.
especially in psychological angles like that. I mean, you just get engrossed, like, oh my gosh, what is the story here? Like, what is he talking about? What happened?
That's a real believable. That's a good. That really was. And Kevin was a genius that
Y-
way.
You bet. Yeah,
He was the one conducting. He was conducting that orchestra. I mean, he knew.
I mean, he had you like staring at the television, going, "What happened after that?" Tell us
How
what
did
happened.
we end that? Do you remember?
Yeah, you did the Tower of Doom.
Oh, that's okay. There we go. Now remember that what's his name came in on the interview,
Hmm.
right? And he was the big gun in town or whatever. Uh, the Tower of Doom had every guy in the territory in it.
Yeah,
Well,
and
wait a second.
three
It was just
cages stacked on top of each
yeah.
other.
It was me, Kevin, and Patty were the only ones. As far as me, Kevin, and Patty, because she was like going to be like at the top,
Right.
and then we would fight him and I. This was the angle the way it was supposed to be, but somehow the whole territory got into that one.
Yep.
So there he was again, pencil in hand. I didn't think that was very respectful, really.
Right. No, I understand.
I'm
Yeah.
okay, but it would have been much better if could have done it the way he wanted to do it. Then the drama and stuff could have been there. You can just imagine Kevin climbing his way up, and no telling where it would have went from there. But
Well, Kelvin was brilliant. I mean,
yes, he was.
he really was he had a sharp mind for the business for sure.
Hmm. He
So
was.
so
Like
you're
Michael Hayes, the same way,
oh yeah, yeah, both those guys for sure.
just a natural.
Um, so you were there, came back or something after the sellout, after WCW bought Crockett out, and that's when you and Michael teamed up, uh,
Hmm.
and became
88, I think.
the
Was it
fabulous '89 fabulous Freebirds.
89?
Yeah, yeah. Turner bought Crockett in the fall of '88, and you guys you guys won the World Tag Team Championship together.
Yeah, yeah. We had a pretty good run. We did. We had a pretty good run. Lord have mercy. I'm glad we're still alive.
Did you always want to do that, and this was just an opportunity to do it? Did you want to work with Michael like that?
I was always, yeah, I would,
I mean, I
yeah,
knew you guys were close, before, I mean, all the way
yeah.
back to Texas. Or when did you first meet Michael?
It was in Atlanta, and it was at Tommy Rich's birthday party, and it must have been the year that I was in Atlanta or
Mm.
something, right? Because
Yeah.
I didn't fly to Atlanta to go to Tommy's birthday party, so I must have been there. And then that's where I met him, and we hit it off right away, right away, and was always really close. In fact, him and the Birds lived at the Ivy Street Castle. In fact, they almost burned it down. Because they partied there, and think only he could get away with that. But I mean, they were terrible tenants. They really were. In fact, they only were there one time, and they couldn't come back no more.
Then I mean,
But
you guys collaborated and worked on ideas and stuff in Texas. But I mean, this is the first time you guys are actually going to be like in a story together.
yeah,
As far as a team, being part of the Freebirds.
yeah, yeah. Well, it seemed to work out okay. It seemed to.
Yeah.
But it's I don't know. It was a good time.
How was it? Whose idea was it to put Brad with you guys? You put
It might
Brad
have
in
it,
there as Bad Street.
yeah, it might have been Dusty because we also had what was the young black guy's name?
Oh yeah, Richard.
That's Little Richard.
Little Richard Marley.
Little Richard Marley. I mean, um, like Brad wasn't. We didn't call that shot.
Yeah.
So I think it's like if you got a bird flying really high and you don't want him to fly too high, throw some stuff on him or something. That'll bring him down
I mean,
a little bit at a time.
You guys had Little Richard. You had Humperdinck for a while. You had Dallas Page
Dallas
for a while.
Page.
Yeah. You even had
Lord have
Precious.
mercy.
You even had Precious for a little bit. I mean, she
Yeah,
came in there.
yeah, very, very, very short time, but yeah, they tagged everything onto us, but it was just one of those things. We weren't office. Obviously, by now that Michael and I. Well, Michael, he works well at the office. I never was an office type guy. I was
Yeah.
a little bit of a rebel kind of.
What caused you to take off? What?
From Crockett.
No, from WCW.
Oh, you mean when they signed when I left for there about a year or two or something? A year and a half?
Yeah. You took
Well,
off like right.
there was
I wondered if it was Watts because you.
yeah, it was one of the two. Watts was in there, right? Because because we were under contract, and Watts pulled me in and said, and I just think he just didn't want to mess with the angle, but he just said, "Look, you got we'll pay you for a year that you got left on your contract. You don't even have to work. We'll pay you." I said, "Okay, shoot," that's what I did.
That was when he was trying to manage the expenses or whatever, I think.
Yeah, it was all a big, that the business is the business.
Yep.
It has good side.
What caused you to want to fly?
I always wanted to fly. I'm if they scraped everything down, I'm an aviator more than I'm a wrestler. But I just happened to could wrestle and had an art of talking a little bit. I started taking lessons when I first got on the road because Sam Maneker, who was working for Oklahoma, so whatever year, like 71 or 70.
Yep.
Remember Sam? Nobody would know Sam Maneker but me and you.
Sammy Maneker, man.
Isn't that the truth? I mean, who would know Sam Maneker's name? Sorry for my moving camera, but
you're all right.
I'm doing it the old way. So I started taking lessons in Oklahoma. Anytime I got near an airport and anytime I was off on the weekends or during the week, I'd go get any airports, get an instructor to take me up. And so eventually, I was flying. I got my private, and it started building time, over the years. Uh, Holy smokes! Because see, when here's the key to the whole thing here. Let me get a drink of water. When I say the key to the whole thing, I don't know how. I'll tell you the story and you decide. But when I was about 26 years old, and I had about every rating you could get as far as instructor rating, multi-engine, blah blah blah, da da da. There was no more other ratings that at that time. So I said when I was 26, I said when I turn 40, I'm going to retire and fly airplanes. I was 26. I retired on my 40th birthday.
Wow.
3 years, because I'm a little OCD, so I really plan stuff. 3 years prior to that, 4 years, Ronnie and I bought a Cessna 401, and because I got him into flying.
I was gonna ask you who came first.
Yeah, I did, and I got him interested. So we had that 401. We flew that thing on the bashes all around the country on the loops.
Mm.
We would take it, and we'd contact the office, and we'd say, okay, we could take 1, 2, 3. We could take 4 guys in the back and Precious, because she's sit back there. So that's 5, and then Ronnie and I 7. But we don't count us because we're flying it. So we tell the office, but they have to pay for us to get around, right? So how much are the commercial tickets going to cost to get 7 of us around on this loop? And they'd give us a number, and then we'd just go under that number enough to where the airplane was making more money than we were, so to speak. And we were flying our butts off. We were in LA. We were it was 401 that we had. Man, it had a bathroom on it. It had a bar on it. And Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson would fly with us all the time.
Nice.
And Lord only knows what they'd be doing in the back, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, because it was an open bar, and it was whatever you wanted to do, because it didn't matter to us. We shut the little curtain and keep on going. Well, we did that for a few years. I had thousands of hours when I quit. First thing I did is I went and got me a job in Rock Hill, South Carolina, as a flight instructor.
Mm.
Well, that lasted for about a year. I just didn't get into the flight instructor part. I just couldn't do it. It was no fun. So then I got into Southeast Aeromotive flying freight. Well, Ronnie was already flying freight for the other company next door, opposition. They were opposition to each other. And he was flying DC-3s and old Beech 18s that were about ready to fall apart. And we had Arrows and Senecas and stuff like that. And I flew with them for 5 years. And then one day I got out of that plane down in, I forget where I was, Eastern Carolina somewhere. And there were some boys I knew that were flying for U.S. Air, CC Air. And they saw me fall out of this airplane, more or less. And they come over to talk to me, and they said, "You need to quit. You need to get out of there. You're going to get killed. That's what's going to happen. You're going to fly." Because I had been up for like 24 hours. There was no rules, and I was tired, And they said, "Give us your resume, and we'll take it in, and we'll get back to you." So, make a long story short, I give them my paperwork. They took it in. I got hired with U.S. Air.
Wow.
So I flew with them for a while. And then Midway opened up in Raleigh. Did you want me to tell this whole flying story?
Yeah, I want to hear it all. Yeah.
So then I went to Midway. I was flying RJ up there. And then 9/11 came in 2001. Well, heck, that Midway went, they shut down. Well, I had a friend of mine that was working for NetJets Aviation, which is owned by Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
God bless his heart. They said, my buddy said, "Send me your stuff and I'll see if I can get you on." And I sent my stuff, and sure enough, they wanted to see me and stuff. And
well, how about that?
I did the interview, and dang it, man, I got hired, and I was there 20 years.
For NetJets.
Yeah. just had the most fabulous aviation career working for Warren Buffett and his people. I mean, I can't tell you how great it was. I mean, it was just, I flew state of the art equipment, and all over the place.
One of
Holy,
my heroes.
yeah,
I mean,
Warren, yeah, he's
oh
my
my
hero.
gosh, he just
Yeah, I mean, he's my hero too.
he is.
We had Bruce Springsteen. We flew a lot of people like that, but we don't talk about it. But it was a wonderful. What a way to end my career. I think I did 23 years or something.
Wow.
20 years. 20 years with them, and it was 23 years wrestling. So I should be tighter than I am, I think.
Well, hey, now you're getting the big Jack Brisco award. So
Well, and what a icing on the cake, because honest to goodness, when the rubber meets the road, starting the way I started, and young, I left home early, and my wife, she's from Northern Ontario, and I'm from Tampa, Florida. And of course, Ronnie went up there to go fishing at Larry Kazaboski, who was running the territory in the summertime.
yeah.
You remember that name too?
Yeah, I do.
Larry Kazaboski.
Yeah.
He'd run up Northern Ontario, and that's how I met my wife up there. And when we went up there as a family in '67, we went back up there in '68. And then in '69, when we went up there, I stayed, or '68, when we went up there, I stayed up there and because I met my wife and went to school up there and
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
So when you went down to the Carolinas, is that where you just made your home there then from then on, or did you guys move somewhere else?
Yeah. Yeah. No, we've been here now. We were talking about the other night, I think 30 years we've been in Charlotte. And, it's just been a real nice place to settle down. The weather's nice, and it's just a nice place.
Got a couple more questions for you. Who's the number one hero in your life, Jimmy?
Yeah. Well, I think I'd have to say my dad.
Yeah.
I didn't know him long, but I knew him long enough.
What's your best memory about him?
Well, when I was amateur wrestling, we had a big old field next door to that house I was telling you about.
Mm-hmm.
And he built probably a 40 by 40 shed with walls and roof, and he built a ring in there too, and he had 3 rows of ringside,
really,
all the way around it, and it was like a little arena. And on the weekends, what we do, it was in West Tampa, and on the weekends we'd put the word out. Joe Scarpa would too, put the word out in the neighborhood that if anybody wanted to make 25 cents, or 25 cents was what you got paid to work out with me for a few minutes.
Yeah.
And then 50 cents if you could pin me.
Really?
So the neighborhood the neighborhood I was in was a blue collar neighborhood, and the young kids back then, cigarettes were 18 cents a pack, and you could get a Coke for 7 cents.
Mm-hmm.
So 25 cents, even though it's not much today, back in 1961, 62. And the fact that they could just come in there and see if they could beat me up, Well, I did that for about, and you asking me about my dad, and favorite thing would be how he would be just that, he would be with me every time going through what I'd go through in that camp. And I'd make him proud too, boy. We only paid that 50 cents one time.
Oh, wow.
Only time.
You guys were doing the Tim Woods and gimmick of, beat him and, put $100 on his chest or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to run on the weekends. I'd run 6 miles at once. And then, did all right in the tournaments, around Florida and stuff like that with the AAU. But yeah, it was a good time.
So did Eddie Graham know you? at that point? I mean, through
he
Joe, I
he
guess.
knew me. Yeah, yeah. When Joe Scarpa brought me into the program, that he, because he had what was that thing for the kids program, Eddie Graham's camp or
Yeah,
something? It
yeah,
was
the thing that they did with Coach John Heath.
yeah. So Eddie Graham was pretty closely connected to the young wrestlers that he had. It was a wrestling school,
Yeah,
and he would know of me. Plus, I was friends with Mike Graham,
yeah.
so he would know me, and he would know that Joe Scarpa was Joe Scarpa kind of was my backup guy. I mean, he's what got me in, and so that helped me as far as I wasn't just the run of the mill kid. I was Joe
Eddie
Scarpa brought me.
Eddie was big time into that. I mean, he got connected in with the Olympics, and Don Curtis was chairman of the Olympic Committee, I think, at one point with
Yeah,
wrestling.
yeah,
I thought,
that's a funny story if I can
yeah,
tell you
yeah,
one before I
please
forget it.
go
Because
ahead.
if you were going to say something, you remember too, okay?
Yeah, I remember.
Um, because in Florida, Eddie Graham would fly us sometimes to the towns in that Beechcraft he had. Would you ever hear any stories
Oh
about
my
that?
gosh! Oh yeah, yeah, lots of them. Yeah, lots of them
Okay.
from Terry Funk, lots of them from
Uh,
Brisco. Yeah, lots of them.
yeah. So we're flying back from Miami. We're flying back from Miami, and I always like to sit up there in the co-pilot seat because I could fly. Um, and I just look at shit. I just wanted to be up there. Well, this one time we take off from Miami and we get a cruise flight, and he says, "Okay," he says, "I'm gonna go to the back for a little while." Of course, before that, he'd have him a little sip down there beside him, and then he said he was gonna go to the back, and he just said, "You see that? You see way out there? It really bright light looks like a bright dome light." He says, "I'm gonna go back here for a while," and he says, "You just head for that, okay?" And I said, "Okay."
So
And he goes,
he just gave you the yoke then.
Dick gave me the yoke, went in the back, and I wasn't, this wasn't when had a bunch of time. I could fly, I could fly a little bit, but I mean, I wasn't as skilled as I had become at that time. And he let me fly that plane. And finally, we were getting right close to Tampa. I knew it, and I had to get him back out, holler at him, and say, "You need to come up here and land this thing, because I ain't gonna land it." Everybody and the people in the back, humans back there, and bad enough I'm up here pointing it towards that bright light, for crying out loud.
Well, according to some guys I've talked to, they would have rather you've been flying it than Eddie at times. So,
Oh, I know. He's taking off from the taxiway and all kind of horse
oh
things.
my gosh, and flying away from Florida instead of toward it. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
going out toward the ocean instead of
Uh-huh.
going the right way.
Oh my gosh. Amazing.
What you've traveled quite a bit and everything. What's the most beautiful place you've ever been to?
Australia was really nice. I liked it. I liked Australia.
And
I
would you
re-
go? Did you go over there to wrestle, or did you just go
yeah.
to?
No, went over there. Where would that be? What was say? Because Frankie Kane was over there, the
Oh
great
yeah,
Mephisto.
yeah. So was that was after Barnett then, wasn't it? If Frankie was
Yeah,
there, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
We just lost to him too not long ago.
Oh yeah, I know. Boy, he kept away from every. He kept us secluded.
He did.
He was hard to reach. I talked to him a few times, but not in a few years though.
I was so thankful Scott Teal had a lot of time with him and wrote. They wrote two books together. Frankie was
Wow,
so. I mean, he was so knowledgeable. I'm so glad we got those books out of his brain, because he just
what a
remembered.
great guy!
Oh
What
yeah,
a great guy, James Alt. What a great guy! Honest to God, I spent a lot of time with him too in Oklahoma, going up and down the road. That's how him and I would talk for hours and hours and hours.
what did you enjoy about Australia?
I think just the openness of it. The people were really, real decent, nice people. Uh, it just was vast, and you could never you had no boundaries. It was just vast, and the beaches were nice. It was just a nice place.
Yeah, a lot of distance between cities.
Mm-hmm.
If you could,
Well, that's the truth.
if you could go back and talk to a young Jimmy, what advice would you give him?
Wow. Lord, I don't know. I really, that's a good question. And it's one that, what advice would I give a young Jimmy?
Mm-hmm. Knowing what you know now.
Be careful. you know,
Watch your step.
for God's sakes, be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I guess, and really and truly, I've really been blessed, but with all the experiences and the things I kind of done and seen and this and that, I've really been blessed. And I guess that's I hold that close to my heart. It's special. I really, and I'm very appreciative for everything.
After you spent so much time with net jets and, flying and all that, did you regret your time in the business? Do you wish you would have flown your whole career, or were you happy,
No,
doing the half and half?
I'm happy doing the half and half because I think it was meant to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
I had I guess in my mind it was boxed up as an expression to do this, to do the character or the work, to develop a character. And in the very beginning, I didn't even know what character, which Ernie Ladd. I was wrestling as Jimmy Garvin. That was it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I managed what did I manage? Buddy Rogers for a while when he was down in Florida, or Buddy Rogers managed me. That's what it was. And but I was like, I wasn't doing anything. Really not really making any marks. And I was coming back from Miami, and I was riding with not Lester Walsh. What the heck was it? And one of the old timers. I'll try to remember his name. And he said, "Kid," he says, you got a good background, and you got this, you got that. He said, but people ain't gonna come and pay to see you. He says, you're a little boring. What are they gonna come and? He says, you need a gimmick. And see, I never was a gimmick. I was straight, no
Jimmy Garvin.
frills. Yeah, I wore a sweatpants jacket. There wasn't nothing to it, and there wasn't nothing to the character either.
Sure.
And he said, you need a gimmick. And ever since then, when he said that, Ernie Ladd was who told me that. That's who it was. I thought, well, there's really no, and I started thinking about it. And then, and then I built the character. And that's how that kind of came about. But
Did you ever fly with Lester Welch?
yeah, sure did.
He,
Sure.
he started flying really young.
Yeah.
Because they had that huge territory in Tennessee, and they had all those live television shows on Saturdays they had to get around to, and Lester would fly the top guys around to all those live shows.
Yeah, he could fly. Lester could go.
So out of the wrestling business, did you take any lessons from it that you still live by, or the things that you learned?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I learned to be grateful through that, but I mean, or just I think just grateful to be alive for one, and grateful to have experienced what I experienced, to see both sides of everything. The good side, the bad side.
Being in the entertainment business, any kind of entertainment business, is very
It's
interesting.
it's vast, and it actually it's a thing that as we sit here and talk. We'd probably have to sit here. If we sat here for a few more hours, we could, there'd be other stuff that would come out of the ground,
Sure.
almost like planting a garden or something, because it's so vast. You think about the people that you met, the people that you saw in all those years, and then growing up yourself, the things you went through. Where do you categorize all that? Where do you put a lot of that? You got to put away, because you don't want to remember. A lot of it you do want to remember. So And then you try to, if you can pass it on to save somebody a lot of grief, you know, you try to maybe do that if you can. But
Yeah.
I
Did you
don't know.
have
I know
did you have any guys in the business that you sort of mentored or you gave advice to that were young when you were in the business?
if I couldn't really recall any of their names, but if I had the opportunity and I saw somebody that was in that position and I had a little bit of advice, maybe
Hmm.
I might tell them, you know, and then that would just all depend. You know, some guys don't take advice that good.
What was your most memorable flight? Who did you take that sticks out in your mind?
Well,
You mentioned Springsteen before. I mean,
yeah,
flying for net jets, you had all kinds of people.
yeah. We had all everybody just um, that, uh, again. That's I don't, you know, I don't. We see we flew those people, we never bothered them,
Yeah, yeah, right. You were up
so
front.
we didn't get to know them that way. It's not like we got to know them or
Did
meet
you
them.
ever
You
get
know,
to fly Warren?
no, I flew his family though.
Yeah.
I flew his kids, um, and Lord, what a great company though! Holy smokes!
Yeah. Like I say,
Wonderful equipment, and the pilots are the state of the art pilots too. I swear they are. You know, the
in my
training that
go ahead, Jimmy.
just
Sorry.
the training. I recall the training. I recall the training at all the places I was at, but the training at NetJets was just the state of the art.
Just, I mean, all the years that all my business experience and executive, I mean, I learned how to be a higher level leader or manager just from Warren Buffett. I mean, just from reading his books and watching him and the things that he would do or whatever, just a quality individual, you know.
Yeah, they don't make them like him anymore. I mean, they just don't, right?
Right, right. Yeah, he and Charlie Munger, well, Charlie passed away,
Charlie
but uh, Warren is still around and
in the same house.
same house in
He
Omaha.
just he just when I was there, he just recently got rid of that car he had and bought him another one, and I think it was used.
Yeah,
I mean, and you know what? I think I learned that from him too. You know, it's I learned that from him too. You know, I don't. What a great way to live. You know, it was not about all that stuff.
right.
You know, there's
Right.
some, you know,
It's just a utility, right, to him. It's not a status thing or
no, not
whatever.
yeah,
It's just I need a car. This is a good car. I'll drive it as long as
yeah.
you know.
My truck is I got an '05 Ford pickup truck,
You do?
an '05, and it looks like brand new. The only thing I ever did was drive it from my house here to the airport.
Yep.
Then I'd park it. Then I'd bring it back home. I mean, it just turned 100,000 miles too. And my wife's car is a Volkswagen Passat. It's a '07.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
kind of give you an idea.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh
I
well,
can
that's it right in with Warren's philosophy. I mean,
that's it.
it's
That's what I learned.
it's just
That's what I
it's just a tool. You know, it's just a tool.
and that's what I learned. And you know, not thanks to wrestling too much, but thanks to Warren and NetJets, I don't have to worry about nothing. You know,
Yep.
you know what I mean? Like
I
I
do.
didn't. I mean, wrestling was entertaining and fun, but you know, when I in my era, it wasn't like the guys today with Vince, you know, making whatever that you know money they're making, but it was certainly a lot more than guys like us in our period
Yeah.
weren't making that mega money, you know. And then hell, you had to spend most of it to stay alive. But no, Warren Buffett, he's like, yeah,
You worked twice as much and made half as much.
yeah, yeah. I
But
learned so much from that operation.
you bet. Well, Jimmy, listen, thanks
Blessed
a
man.
lot for spending time with me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm excited to be in Waterloo with you. I can't wait to. I mean, we had a good conversation here, but I can't wait to spend more time with you out in Iowa.
I can't wait for it. We're gonna have a good time, and Gerald to be out there too,
Oh yeah,
right?
he will. Gerald and
Oh boy.
JBL and the whole
See,
fam family.
Oh man. Well, you better hold on now when we all get together. Get ready.
Jody Simon will be out there, and
Will he?
yeah, Jody Malenko,
Jody Hamilton. Jody Hamilton, right?
Joe Malenko,
Yeah.
Boris Malenko's son.
Right.
All right, man. Well, listen, thanks for spending time with me.
It was my pleasure, and I'm sorry about my bad camera work. You know, I'm sitting here with my iPad holding on to it, it's moving everywhere. So I apologize to the people, and just Tony, I look so forward to getting to know you more. And
You bet.
you know, you're not that far away, so if you're ever in Charlotte, you know, you have to stop by.
Yeah, I will. Thank you,
And I
Jimmy.
yeah, it was a pleasure. You have a nice day.
Man, I hope you enjoyed that. I enjoyed that conversation thoroughly, and I appreciate Jimmy Garvin taking out a little bit of time to spend with me here at the Richards Ranch and talk about his Jack Brisco Award. And you could hear in his voice the emotion and the feeling in his heart about how special Jack Brisco and Jerry Brisco have been to him as a person and also as a person in the wrestling business. And I talked about him talked to him about it off recording. And he is just so grateful and thankful to be receiving this red belt trophy. I got to hold it last year. I think I might have mentioned that in the talk that I had with Jimmy. I got to hold the Jack Brisco Award, the red NWA belt. And if I can this year, I'm going to get it, and I'm going to get somebody to take my photo with it. Maybe I'll get it with Jimmy. That'll be it, like me and Jimmy. We'll take a photo of us holding his Jack Brisco Award and me holding my Hall of Fame. And maybe show my new Hall of Fame ring, too. This year we're getting rings for the Hall of Fame. So I'm excited about all of that. At the Tragos-Thesz Hall of Fame coming up July 9th, 10th, and 11th in Waterloo, Iowa. And you need to be there to help celebrate with us, with James Beard and with Jimmy Garvin and myself. And coming up next week here on the show, I'm going to have Ron Fuller on again. And we're going to talk about the Welch family. And we're going to go into detail about the Welch family. And the Welch family are going in as a group to the Tragos-Thesz Hall of Fame. And I can't wait for that as well. I've been pushing for that for a while, as have other historians. And we're going to get Roy Welch in the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame this year, too. Hey, I want to thank you. I'm going to list off where we get listeners for our show. Of course, all across the United States, every state in the United States tunes in either to the audio version of our podcast show or the video version. We are also big in Canada. We are big in Great Britain. We are big in Australia. We're big in France. We're big in the United Arab Emirates. We are big in a lot of different, I think I counted, let's count them up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. About almost 50 countries represented who listen to our show or watch our show. Thank you so much. And a big shout out to Ashburn, Virginia. Thank you so much for sending us a note here just a couple of weeks ago. Thank you so much to Dixon, Tennessee, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Clifton Forge, Virginia. We see you. We hear you. Albuquerque, New Mexico, Cincinnati, Ohio, Singapore. Thank you so much. New York City, Atlanta, Georgia, Concord, Ontario, Canada, Brampton, Ontario, Canada. Thank you so much, Orlando, Florida, Dunbar, West Virginia, Roseville, Minnesota, Blacktown, New South Wales, Great Britain, Humphrey, New Brunswick, San Marcos, California, Williamsville, New York, San Francisco, California. Of course, the Music City capital of the world, Music City, USA, Nashville, Tennessee, also North Little Rock, Arkansas, Aiken, South Carolina, and many, many others. Thank you so much for watching and listening to the Pro Wrestling Time Tunnel History Show. And I want to say a special thanks to our sponsor, the Grizzly Up Soap Company. A quick shout out to them, Grizzly Up out of Hopkinsville, Kentucky. If you're like me and you've gotten tired of those big box soaps that leave your skin feeling stripped and dry, you're going to love these guys. I mean, they're a small family-owned shop that handcrafts everything in small batches using real goat milk and real clean skin-loving ingredients. Their goat milk bars give you that rich, creamy lather that actually leaves your skin feeling soft instead of tight. And the scents, oh my God, they're seriously good. I have been hooked on the pina colada. I got a tropical vibe in my shower now with the pina colada soap. The oatmeal milk and honey is super comforting. And their new one, May Your Weeds Be Wildflowers, is a really nice, sweet floral that's become a fast favorite around here. Several people that I know have been getting Grizzly Up soap, and they love May Your Weeds Be Wildflowers. They've also got rugged options like tobacco and bay leaf. And you know, I shower a lot of times with Kentucky bourbon and Loaded Weapon. Well, Travis was just here the other day, Travis and Chastity that own the Grizzly Up Soap Company. Travis comes around the Richards Ranch and helps me with a lot of my chores and things that I got going on. He brought me a new Grizzly Up Soap gift bag, and inside 2 brand new soaps. I'm going to show you these and talk about them. We got Fierce with Grit. Look at that. Isn't that cool looking? Fierce with Grit. Oh, smells so good. And Live Wire with Grit. And these scents are just amazing. Everything is made with that same, if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly attitude. Bold, natural, and made to last. You can swing by their shop at 200 East 9th Street in downtown Hopkinsville, or grab whatever you need online at grizzlyupsoapco.com. That's grizzlyupsoapco.com. Grizzly Up Soap Company, supporting a local Kentucky family while treating your skin right, and I highly recommend checking them out and getting yourself some Grizzly Up soap. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you, and what a great show today. My guests were James Beard and also Jimmy Garvin, 2 guys that are going into the Hall of Fame with me at the Tragos-Thesz Hall of Fame in Waterloo, coming up next weekend. Not this weekend, but next weekend. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, the Pro Wrestling Time Tunnel YouTube, and check out our Substack, Tony Richards 4 at Substack.com, where we have our postings about the Daily Chronicle and all the great history documentation and writing that I'm doing over there for my subscribers. And if you haven't yet become a subscriber, you need to sign up. You'll get the Daily Chronicle absolutely free every single day in your inbox. If you want to support my pro wrestling historian stuff that I'm doing, I mean, it takes money. It costs money to produce this show, and to pay my producer, Dominic D'Angelo, and to have a Google Drive, and to get different things going here. I mean, all this doesn't just happen. So we appreciate every dollar that you send to support our show and to support me and my history work. Acquiring a lot of the historical information and all, a lot of it costs money. And so if you want to sign up for a paid subscription that supports me as a pro wrestling historian, you'll get the extra value stuff that I write at the Pro Wrestling Time Tunnel, like the evolution of wrestling, like family tradition, tracking the world champions, and a whole lot more. It comes to you at least 6 or 7 times a month. As well as the every single day history newsletter, the Daily Chronicle. You can get that at my Substack channel. And let me just tell you this too. If you're going to subscribe, be sure and download the Substack app onto your phone, because man, there are a lot of great writers, a lot of great information on Substack. Not just me. There are a lot of great guys writing about the current product and about some other things that are located there on Substack. And if you have the app, you can get the Daily Chronicle will come to that app every single morning, and you can also listen to it. There's an audio version of my newsletter every single day. And, that's another thing I wanted to mention. Then I'll get on out of here because it's been a big show today. Recently, I narrated and read the piece I did on Dick Murdoch, the life and career of Dick Murdoch. And I read that piece and sent that out as an extra to our subscribers. I'd like to hear from you about that. If you liked that and you liked hearing me read the newsletter or hearing me read those biographical pieces that I write, you want to hear me read them in my voice with my inflection, how it was coming across in my mind when I wrote it out, I'd love to hear about that. You can comment down below in the comment section here on YouTube or on Substack, or send me an email, TonyRichards4 at gmail.com. TonyRichards4 at gmail.com is my email address, and you can send me that if you liked that narration of the life and career of Dick Murdoch and you want to hear more of those. I'll do more of those. All right. Well, that's it for our show this week. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a big show. 2 great guests, a great history lesson on Julius Siegel and Houston wrestling, and we're going to get into more of that too as my series on Brisco and Bradshaw progresses. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. Don't forget, if you want better neighbors, be a better neighbor. Thanks, everybody. Tony Richards saying so long from the Bluegrass State.
Thanks for tuning in to the Pro Wrestling Time Tunnel Podcast. Tune in for another great episode next week, interviewing wrestlers, referees, and media personalities that have made the sport of professional wrestling great. We'll release a new episode soon. Don't you dare miss it.